Hello, Paranormal M viewers. I absolutely love what I do. It's such a pleasure to be here sharing these paranormal experiences with you. Thank you so much for sending in so many of your own stories. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can be among the first to comment. Now get cozy in bed, pull the covers up, and let's dive into today's paranormal experiences. So this happened when I was working at an old hotel in downtown Seattle while I was in college. I was a valet in Bellman, and the place had this mix of elegance and age that made it memorable. It was one of those historic hotels where famous people would check in now and then, but it also had a reputation. Staff used to swap stories about strange things happening there, hearing voices downstairs, feeling someone brush past them when nobody was around, that kind of thing. The top floor of the hotel was the 6th floor, and it was mostly used for events. There was a kitchen up there, a couple of big banquet rooms, and a few guest rooms that hardly anyone ever stayed in. One night, I was working the evening shift, getting close to the end of the night and trying to finish up my closing tasks before the overnight guy came in. I was standing at the concierge desk, sorting through valet slips and checking them against the nightly log when the phone rang. I picked it up and said, "Concierge desk, this is Nate. How can I help you?" The guest on the other end sounded tired. They said, "Hi, we're in room 505, and we were wondering how much longer the party upstairs is supposed to go on. It's pretty loud, and we're trying to get some sleep." That immediately caught me off guard, because there weren't supposed to be any events happening that night. Still, I figured maybe a few guests had wandered up there. One of the banquet rooms opened onto a rooftop patio, and people sometimes like to sneak up for the view, have a drink, and hang out a little longer than they should. So I told them, "I'll go check it out right now." I got in the elevator and headed up to the 6th floor. The second the doors opened, I could hear it all. Voices, laughter, glasses clinking together, and a piano playing, clear as day. It sounded like a full gathering, dozens of people, easy. There was one banquet room up there with an old piano inside, so it all seemed to line up. The strange part was that when I walked over to the double doors and tried to open them, they were locked. I knocked, expecting someone to answer, or at least for the noise to shift a little, but nothing happened. The sound kept going, like a full party was happening just on the other side. At that point, I was more confused than anything, so I went back downstairs to grab a master key. It only took a few minutes, really. I came right back up, but this time, when the elevator opened, the whole floor was silent. Completely silent. No voices, no laughter, no clinking glasses, no piano, nothing. I walked straight to the banquet room, unlocked the doors, and opened them up. The room was empty. Not just mostly empty, completely empty. And that's what got me. There's no way that what sounded like 50 people could have packed up and disappeared that fast. There was only one elevator, and it was small. Even if everyone had decided to leave the exact second I went downstairs, there just wasn't enough time for that many people to get out without me seeing or hearing at least some of it. I just stood there, staring into this silent, empty room, trying to make sense of it. To this day, I can't really explain it. Maybe it was some kind of leftover energy, like an echo of something that had happened there years before. I don't know. I'd heard plenty of ghost stories from other employees and guests, but that was the only thing that ever happened to me personally. And honestly, that was enough. I honestly never took ghost stories seriously. Not until a few weeks ago. I live alone in this old studio apartment in the city. It's nothing fancy. The floors creak, the pipes groan, and the walls are so thin I can practically hear my neighbors sneeze. But the rent is cheap, and these days, that's reason enough to stay anywhere. At first, it was little things. The kind of stuff you brush off because you don't want to sound dramatic. My keys would end up somewhere I swore I didn't leave them. I'd hear water dripping in the bathroom after I knew I'd turned the faucet off. Sometimes the hallway outside my bedroom would feel freezing cold, even when the heater was running non-stop. I kept telling myself it was just an old apartment being old. But then I started hearing footsteps. The first time was about 3 weeks ago. I was half asleep when I heard these soft steps moving across the living room. Clear as day. I sat straight up in bed, heart pounding, convinced somebody had gotten inside. I grabbed my phone, ready to call for help, and checked every inch of the apartment. Behind the shower curtain, inside the closet, the front door lock, the windows, everything. There was nothing. No one. So I told myself it had to be the neighbor upstairs, even though it was almost 2 in the morning. A couple nights later, it happened again. Only this time, the footsteps didn't stop in the living room. I heard them come all the way down the short hall and stop right beside my bed. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I just lay there with my eyes shut, completely frozen. And I swear, it felt like someone was standing there, looking at me. The room went cold. Not just chilly, cold in that deep, awful way that makes your chest feel tight. When I finally forced myself to open my eyes, no one was there. But my bedroom door was closed. I always sleep with it open. After that, things got worse fast. One morning I walked into the kitchen and every cabinet door was hanging open. Another night, the shower turned on by itself while I was making dinner. I had maintenance come by, and of course, they couldn't find anything wrong. They shrugged it off like old pipes, bad pressure, normal building issues. Then a few days ago, I came home from the store and found a single wet footprint on the bathroom tile. Just one. And it definitely wasn't mine. It was smaller, way smaller, like it belonged to a kid. That's when I finally asked the woman who lives across the hall if anything bad had ever happened in my apartment. She got quiet right away. Then she told me there used to be a girl living there back in the late 80s. Her name was Mara, or maybe Myra, something close to that. She kept mostly to herself, and people in the building said she was struggling with a lot. One day, after no one had seen her for several days, they found her in the bathtub. What really got to me, though, was what my neighbor said next. She told me that before Mara died, she used to complain all the time about hearing footsteps in the apartment at night. Footsteps when no one was there. Last night was the breaking point. I don't know how long I stayed like that. It felt like forever. Finally, I reached over and switched on the lamp. The sound stopped instantly. The closet door was cracked open a few inches. I always keep it pushed shut, even though the latch doesn't work right. This morning, nothing was missing, but all my clothes were shoved over to one side, bunched together like someone had gone through every piece. So now I'm sitting in a cafe telling you this because I really don't want to go back there. My coworker says I should set up a camera, and maybe she's right. But the truth is, I'm terrified of what I might catch on it. I'm stuck in that lease for 8 more months, and there's no way I can afford to leave. Tonight I'll probably sleep with every light on in the apartment. But deep down, I don't think that's going to make any difference at all. So I'm 18, and not long ago I went to my granddad's funeral. The whole day was really heavy. I never had my dad around growing up, so my granddad was more than just a grandparent to me. He was the closest thing I had to a father. He'd always been that steady, caring presence in my life, so saying goodbye hit me harder than I can really explain. The day itself felt like it disappeared in a blur. There was so much emotion, so many people, and by the end of it, I was completely drained, mentally and emotionally. Later that night, I got into bed sometime after 1 in the morning. I don't remember the exact time, just that it was late and I was exhausted. Before trying to sleep, I said a few words out loud to my granddad. I thanked him for everything he'd done for me, for all the love and happiness he brought into my life, and I said I hoped he was at peace, just in case, somehow, he could still hear me. Then, 2 really strange things happened that night. The first thing was this weird moment not long after I lay down. Every night, I leave my phone charging on the desk in the far corner of my room, nowhere near my bed. I must have only been drifting off for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, when I suddenly half woke up convinced my phone was in bed with me, playing music. It sounded like some kind of band music, something soft and brassy, which honestly made sense because there had been music like that at the funeral earlier that day. In my sleepy state, I somehow became convinced my phone had slipped down the side of the bed. So I spent several minutes reaching around in the dark, trying to find it, before suddenly remembering it was still on my desk where I'd left it. I brushed it off at the time and eventually went back to sleep. Then later, maybe a couple of hours after that, things got even stranger. I woke up the next morning at around 7 o'clock, in my mom's bed. And I mean, I had absolutely no memory of getting there. I vaguely remember waking up in the night like I needed the toilet, which is normal for me, but I don't remember actually walking to the bathroom. I don't remember using it. I don't even really know for sure whether I needed to go at all. It's like there's just a complete blank space in my memory, and then suddenly I'm waking up in my mom's room, lying in her bed, trying to work out how on earth I got there. My mom was already awake by then, and when I asked her about it later, she said she didn't remember me getting into bed beside her either. She was just as surprised as I was when she woke up and saw me there. What makes it even stranger is that I've never been a sleepwalker. Not as a kid, not ever. There's no history of anything like that with me. When I was really little, I used to climb into my mom's bed sometimes, like a lot of kids do. But that was years and years ago. We're talking over a decade. Every now and then, maybe once in a blue moon, we'll joke about old times and end up sharing the bed if one of us is unwell or something. But that hadn't happened in a long time. There was no reason for me to go in there that night. We've lived in this house for years, and I know it inside out. I can move around it in complete darkness without any problem, and I usually do because I like sleeping with the room pitch black. I never switch lights on if I get up in the night. The bathroom is upstairs, and my mom's room is right across from it, while mine is a bit farther down the hall. Usually we both sleep with our doors shut, but that night my mom had left hers open because she was so exhausted from the funeral that she basically fell asleep as soon as she got into bed. But at the same time, part of me can't help feeling there was something more to it. I do believe in spirits. I believe there's something after this life. I've never had any experience that made me feel strongly one way or the other before, and I'm not someone who goes looking for signs. But this felt different. Not scary, not threatening. Actually, the opposite. It felt comforting. It almost felt like maybe my granddad was somehow still looking after us. Like after such a painful day, he wanted me and my mom close together that night. Like maybe, in some small way, he guided me there. Maybe it was just grief. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe my brain simply did something odd after one of the hardest days of my life. But honestly, a part of me still likes to believe it was him. This happened more than 20 years ago, when I was about 8 months pregnant with my son Mason. I had just gotten home from work and I was alone in the house. I went upstairs like I normally would, and all of a sudden, I felt this presence behind me. You know that instant, icy feeling that makes every hair on your body stand up? It was exactly that. I froze. For a second, I didn't even want to turn around, because something in me already knew I wasn't going to like what I saw. But I finally looked over my shoulder, and standing there was this unbelievably tall, shadow-like figure. I still don't know how else to describe it. It was just huge and dark and wrong. The second I saw it, panic completely took over. My bedroom was only a few steps away, and I ran straight into it and slammed the door. I pressed my back against it like that was somehow going to protect me. In that moment, I really believed if I just held that door shut, whatever I'd seen couldn't get to me. I stayed there for what felt like forever, too scared to move. When I finally came out, it was gone. But ever since that day, I've never been able to shake the feeling tied to that part of the house. Every single time I walk past the hall closet at the top of the stairs, right near where it happened, that same fear comes back. It's so strong that I won't over that closet myself, and I don't even like being in the house when someone else opens it. There have been other strange things over the years too. I've seen what looked like a small child walking past out of the corner of my eye, and for a split second, I thought it was my son, only to realize he was somewhere else in the house the whole time. That was unsettling, but it didn't feel threatening. Another time, I heard what sounded like an older man grunting, like the kind of noise someone makes when they're trying to stand up from a chair. No elderly man has ever lived in this house, so again, it was strange, but not terrifying. The one experience that really stands out to me as possibly connected happened when Mason was around 10 years old. He came home from school one afternoon and went straight to his room to play video games. A little while later, he called me in absolute hysterics. He was crying so hard he could barely get the words out, and he kept saying there was a huge black bird in his room. I rushed home, and he was still beside himself when I got there. I asked him where the bird was, and he told me it had flown into his bedroom closet, so he slammed the closet door shut. What always stuck with me is that if you were to knock out the back wall of his bedroom closet, it would line up almost exactly with that upstairs hall closet that has always terrified me. So there I was, trying to be practical, holding a butterfly net, and fully expecting to find some trapped bird flapping around in there. I opened the closet door, and there was nothing. Nothing at all. I poked through everything with the net, thinking maybe it was hiding. Still nothing. He didn't even have that much in there. Just a few clothes, a couple of games, some random stuff. I took everything out carefully, piece by piece, and there was no sign of any bird. No feathers, no mess, no sound, nothing. Looking back, there's one more thing that feels important. When he was a baby, maybe around a year and a half old, he used to wake up in the middle of the night screaming. I mean, absolutely hysterical. He'd stand up in his crib, staring into one specific corner of his room, crying like he was seeing something that terrified him. I would go in, pick him up, rock him, try everything to calm him down, but nothing worked as long as we stayed in that room. He would not stop staring at that corner. The only thing that ever helped was taking him downstairs and putting him back to sleep there while I stayed nearby. So yes, I've had a lot of odd things happen in that house, but that tall shadow and whatever my son saw have always felt different. Those are the moments that have stayed with me. And to this day, I still can't explain why that upstairs closet, and maybe even that whole area around it, feels so deeply tied to whatever was there. I was about 10 when I had the first experience that really stayed with me. I saw what I can only describe as a jinn, though I still don't know whether it was meant to be harmless or something darker. It had taken the form of a girl I knew, almost perfectly, except the hair was wrong. That was the detail I couldn't get past. Ever since then, strange things have followed me in one way or another. Later, I moved abroad for university, and honestly, I can't remember living in a single apartment where something unsettling didn't happen at least once. There was always some odd feeling, some sound, some moment that made the air feel wrong. Now I'm in my 30s, and about 7 months ago, my family and I moved into a new apartment in a different city. For a while, everything felt normal, quiet, safe. I actually thought maybe, for once, nothing would happen. But then, just like always, before I'd even been there a full year, it started again. Sometimes I wonder if these things somehow find me, or if they only begin to notice me after I've been somewhere long enough. I don't know. It's a strange thought, but after so many years, it's hard not to wonder. What happened last night shook me more than anything before, because I've never had one actually speak to me. I've heard the usual things over the years: muffled noises, strange cries, sounds that seem to come out of nowhere, like through a phone or buried inside music, but never a clear voice directed at me. I'd been up late watching television until around 2 in the morning. My spouse and our baby were asleep in the bedroom. It's a one-bedroom place, and for the past few nights I'd been sleeping on the couch in the living room because my spouse snores and the bed just isn't comfortable for all three of us. Usually it's the other way around, but I really needed a decent night of sleep. The night before, when I turned everything off and the room went dark, I had this awful feeling. You know that heavy, uneasy sense that something is there with you in the dark? I tried to brush it off. I told myself it was probably just because I was sleeping in a different spot than usual, going from the bedroom to the living room. Still, the feeling was intense enough that the next night, the moment I switched off the TV, I caught myself thinking, I really hope I don't feel that again. Usually, if I ever sense something strange, it passes. It's there for a night or a moment, and then it's gone. It doesn't stay. But this time, right after that thought crossed my mind, I heard a voice from just behind my head, maybe 2 feet away. I was lying on the couch, and it sounded close, far too close. The voice was rough, low, and unnatural, raspy in a way that made my whole body go cold. I couldn't make out what it said, and at first I didn't immediately think of anything paranormal. I thought maybe my spouse had come into the room and said something I didn't catch. So I answered the way anyone would. I said, "What?" And then it replied. Same voice, same horrible, gravelly sound. That was the exact moment I knew something was wrong. And on top of that, they weren't even feeling well that night. Pranking me would have been the last thing on their mind. So then I was left with the reality of it. It was 2 in the morning. The apartment was completely quiet. The voice had come from directly behind me, clear as day. And what frightens me most is that it responded. I spoke, and it answered back. That means there was an exchange, however brief. A conversation, if you can even call it that. I still have no idea what it said. I only caught the beginning of one word, something that sounded like it started with an N. That's the part I can't shake. It's one thing to hear knocks, footsteps, or movement in another room. It's one thing to catch a shadow out of the corner of your eye. But hearing a voice speak directly to you, right beside you, is something else entirely. It changes everything. And the feeling I got from it was not good. The darkness already felt wrong before it happened, and the voice itself felt sinister. That's why, in my mind, I keep calling it a demon, even though I know jinn can be good or bad, just like people can. What I do know is that I've never experienced anything like this before, and it terrified me. Truly terrified me. So, let me tell you this the way it happened. A little before Christmas in 2023, I met my fiance's mom for the first time. It wasn't a long visit, nothing dramatic on the surface, but I could feel pretty quickly that she didn't warm up to me. And apparently I was right, because as soon as the night was over, she told my fiance she didn't like me. At the time, I figured it was just one of those awkward family things. I didn't think much of it. But then, not long after that, everything kind of spiraled. In the early hours of New Year's Eve, around 2 in the morning, I was driving home from work when I got hit in a crash that very easily could have killed me. Another driver ran a red light at full speed. Later, I found out he'd been trying to get his girlfriend to the hospital after stabbing her during some drug-fueled episode. It was chaos. The impact knocked me out cold. When I came to, the very first thing I saw was a hand reaching into my car, trying to pull open the passenger door. What stuck with me was the tattoo on it, an upside-down pentacle on the back of the hand. Then I looked up and saw this woman covered in blood. The second she realized I was awake, she started screaming at me through the shattered window, saying, "You killed my baby!" Over and over, just absolutely losing it, until the police got there. And one detail that still bothers me is that I had been on the phone with my fiancé when the crash happened. The call cut off in the wreck, obviously, but she heard enough to know something was terribly wrong. I ended up in the hospital and got released the next morning. Somehow, the only major lasting injury turned out to be a traumatic brain injury. My ears rang constantly for weeks after that. It took a long time before I felt anything close to normal again. And honestly, I still deal with depression that started after the injury. Now, the reason this whole thing feels heavier than just a terrible accident is because over the last year or so, more pieces of the bigger picture started falling into place. My fiance's mother comes from a family with deep roots in Louisiana, just outside New Orleans. Her family history is tied to slavery, generational trauma, all of that. A lot of relatives still live in the same area where that history happened. There's also a long family association with folk spirituality and occult practices. Her mom has never come right out and said she practices anything herself, but she's always had this quiet fascination with that world and refuses to talk openly about it. She's also not a stable person, and that part matters. She was abusive to my fiancé growing up. At one point, she even broke her nose and claimed it was because she heard demons speaking through her. That kind of thing wasn't isolated. It got so bad that my fiancé's father eventually left, even though he still helps support the household from a distance. So when I learned that, right after my call dropped during the crash, her mother walked into my fiancé's room at 2 in the morning just to ask how I was doing, it landed strangely. My fiancé, panicked and half in shock, told her she thought I'd just been in a serious accident. And her mother basically said that was unfortunate, that she'd pray for her, not for me, and then just walked out. That stuck with me. And then there's the part I still can't explain. Ever since that crash, whenever I see an upside-down pentacle, whether it's on jewelry, a shirt, or even in some random image, my ears start ringing intensely. Not just mildly. Bad enough that I have to look away or leave. And what's strange is I don't even feel emotional when I see it. I'm not panicking. I'm not spiraling. It's just a symbol to me. But my body reacts instantly. There's a cafe near my job where one of the baristas wears that exact symbol on a necklace all the time. If I spot him through the window, I just turn around and leave. The ringing is that severe. So that's really why all of this has stayed with me. It's not just the accident itself. It's the timing, the hostility, the family history, the eerie little details, and the way my body still reacts to that symbol like it remembers something I can't fully process. And I guess the question I keep circling back to is this. Did Mara's mother put some kind of curse on me? I know that probably sounds wild, and maybe there's a logical explanation for all of it. Maybe it's trauma. Maybe it's my brain attaching meaning to the first thing I saw when I woke up after nearly dying. But I can't shake the feeling that something about all of this is off. The atmosphere around it has just never felt right. A couple of nights ago, something happened that I still can't really shake, and I wanted to share it in case it sounds familiar to anyone. I use a sleep tracking app sometimes, just out of curiosity, and the next morning I found a short recording from the middle of the night. What caught me off guard was that it picked up a voice I never heard while I was actually asleep. It was a man's voice, very clear, saying 99-7. What made it so unsettling wasn't just the words. It was the way it sounded. It didn't sound human in the normal sense. Not like someone talking nearby, and definitely not like me mumbling in my sleep. It had this compressed, sharp, almost artificial quality to it. The closest thing I can compare it to is an old two-way radio, some kind of military transmission, or maybe a clipped archival audio file. I've gone over every normal explanation I could think of. I was alone that night. No one else was in the room, and the app I use only records sound. It doesn't play anything back. The only audio I had on was a YouTube ASMR video running from my laptop while I fell asleep, and that was it. No autoplay, no extra apps open, nothing in the background that should have kicked on by itself. The next day I checked everything I could. I went through my YouTube history, looked for ad activity, checked whether another video could have started, whether a tab might have switched, whether there was some background sound I had missed. Nothing lined up. No video, no ad, no accidental audio source explained that voice. And the words themselves were strange too. It didn't say a sentence. It just said, very precisely, 99-7. No emotion, no context, no surrounding noise that made it make sense. It didn't sound like a radio host, and it didn't sound like anything you'd hear in an ASMR video. It almost sounded like a code, or some kind of signal check. The weirdest part is that I never heard it in the moment. I only found it the next morning when I listened back. That same night, I also had a really disturbing run of false awakenings. You know those dreams where you think you've woken up, but you're still dreaming? It kept happening over and over. There were threatening figures, this long corridor I was trying to get through, and at one point in the dream, my apartment looked like it had been completely wrecked. It had that horrible, lucid nightmare feeling where everything seems vivid and wrong at the same time. I'm not trying to say it was something paranormal. I honestly don't know what it was. I just know I've ruled out the obvious explanations, and the voice still doesn't match anything I knowingly played or heard. So I guess I'm asking, has anyone else ever found something like that in a sleep recording? A voice that sounds more like a transmission than a person? And does 99-7 mean anything to anyone? Maybe some kind of signal, code, or audio glitch pattern? Even if nobody has an answer, it would honestly help just to know I'm not the only person this has happened to. So here's the thing. I'm 23, still living at my parents' place while I commute to school, and I've never been the kind of person to jump straight to ghosts or demons or whatever. I grew up Jewish, and that part of my life means a lot to me. The traditions, the history, the way I was taught to think through things carefully, it all shaped me. So whenever something strange happens, my first instinct is always to find the practical explanation. I'm usually pretty good at that. But this has been harder to file away neatly. The first time anything started feeling off was back during the 2020-2021 school year, when I was finishing high school remotely. My older brother had recently moved out, and I took over his old room as my little setup for online classes. I had my laptop, 2 monitors, headphones on all the time, way too many tabs open, just absolute chaos. I've had terrible attention issues for as long as I can remember, so I was constantly overstimulated, constantly half-focused, and honestly, sometimes I couldn't tell whether a sound came through my headset or from somewhere in the house. A couple months into that year, I started hearing knocking. Not loud pounding or anything dramatic, just a quick knock-knock on the wooden frame of the doorway. Enough to make me look up and say, "Yeah?" or get up and open the door. And every time, there'd be nobody there. Sometimes the hallway would be empty. A few times, I knew for a fact I was the only person home. At first, I brushed it off. The house was older, built in the late 50s, I think, and there was this old central vacuum hookup right by the door, plus an air vent in the same wall. So I told myself it had to be the house settling, or pipes knocking, or airflow doing something weird. That explanation made sense. It still makes sense, honestly. The only thing that bothered me was how specific the sound always felt. It always sounded like it came from the door frame itself, and it almost always happened when I had both ears covered with my headphones. It was rare, too. Maybe once every few weeks, always quick, always over before I could really test it. Then a few years passed, and, in August of 2024, it started again. By then I'd moved into a finished room in my parents' basement while commuting to college. It was actually a pretty nice setup. Real walls, door, lamps, overhead light, everything. Not some unfinished storage corner. Around that same time, I had this dream that really got under my skin. And I know how that sounds. I hate using a dream as evidence for anything, because dreams are slippery. They mutate the second you wake up. But this one stuck with me in a way I can't really explain. I woke up abruptly because my dad accidentally triggered the house alarm early in the morning, and I wrote down what I remembered right away. Even now, I don't fully trust the details I wrote, but I trust the feeling it left behind. The feeling was awful, deeply personal. Not like I'd had a nightmare about monsters or being chased, but like something had reached directly into the center of how I understand faith, tradition, God, all of it, and told me I had it wrong. Not Judaism itself, exactly. More like my place inside it, my understanding, my relationship to it. Like I'd been singled out somehow. That was the part that shook me. Not the dream itself, the feeling after. And right around then, the knocking came back. Then in February of 2025, something else happened. In this one, I actually do think I can explain. At least, mostly. I'd started using weed pens at night. Not in a healthy way, if I'm being honest. I was stressed, disappointed in myself, feeling stuck, and it turned into a bad coping habit pretty fast. After a few weeks of that, I started hearing whispering at night. Very soft, not constant. Just the sound of people murmuring right outside my room in the basement. Every time it happened, I'd freeze and listen, and every time I did, it stopped. That part, I think, probably was paranoia, or at least partly. I was young, I was using way too much. I already felt guilty about hiding it from my parents, and the whispers almost always made me feel like I was about to get caught. Like my parents were right outside the door, talking quietly before confronting me. Once I stopped using pens alone, the whispers almost completely disappeared. Now I only use anything socially, and not often. So that part doesn't haunt me the same way. It fits too well into a pattern I understand. Still, even then, the whispers only ever happened when I had headphones on. That detail kept bothering me. By May of 2025, I was still in that basement room, still commuting, still trying to ignore anything that didn't come with an obvious explanation. The room itself was normal. The door latched fine. My overhead light worked, my desk lamp worked, the little lamp near my bed worked. I'd gotten into the habit of keeping one ear uncovered whenever my parents were home, just in case someone actually called for me or knocked for real. and if I heard knocking without a voice attached to it, I'd mostly ignore it. I told myself that was the healthy thing to do. Don't feed it. Don't dramatize it. Then came the part I still can't sort out. My mom asked me to start cleaning my room before I moved out for the summer, so I went through this old storage bin full of cables, flash drives, adapters, all the random tech junk that piles up over time. I found an old USB stick and figured I'd see what was on it, mostly because I wanted to recover some school stuff from before our accounts got wiped. There was a PowerPoint on it with a boring name, something like Midterm Slides, American Government 2020. Totally generic. The kind of file I absolutely would have made half asleep the night before a deadline. Plain template, ugly font, walls of text. Nothing unusual about it. Until I clicked onto one slide, something about an early 1800s Senate election, I think, and noticed there was writing in the speaker notes. Not normal notes either, just short lines, one sentence per line, no bullets, no explanation, just fragments. Stuff like, nobody is upstairs, mute the audio, second from the top now. I went back through the whole presentation, every slide. Only that one had notes in it, and that night I couldn't stop thinking about one of the lines, second from the top now. It got stuck in my head in this weird way. I kept turning it over, wondering what it even referred to. The second item in a list? The second line in the notes? I don't know. It just started feeling like an instruction. So I opened the file again, and when I looked at the notes a second time, I swear there was another line at the top. Either it hadn't registered before, or it wasn't there the first time. I know how that sounds. I really do. But this time the top line read, "Begin below notice." And right then, I heard a single knock beside me on the doorframe. One knock. Close enough that it made my whole body tense. And the part that really gets me is this. I meant to go back and save the file somewhere safer. I even thought about attaching it when I tried telling this story before. But later, when I went looking for it again, I couldn't find it. I went through drive after drive, old folders, everything. Nothing. I still remember the file name. I remember the slide. I remember those lines. But I can't produce the file anymore. And that's what unsettles me most. Not because I think that proves anything supernatural. It doesn't. Memory is messy. Fear changes perception. Headphones distort awareness. Weed definitely didn't help. Old houses make weird sounds. All of that is true. But there's still this part of me that keeps wondering whether I've been brushing something off for too long. Whether I've spent years reducing everything to noise and coincidence because that's what makes me feel safe. And now I don't know whether that instinct is helping me stay grounded or keeping me from seeing something I'm supposed to pay attention to. That's the part I can't make peace with. I don't know if I need to make it stop, or if I even can. I don't know whether this is just anxiety stitched together out of years of half-heard sounds, bad sleep, guilt, stress, and one disturbing dream. Or whether I've let myself get too comfortable ignoring things that felt wrong. I just know that sometimes it feels like I'm standing right on the edge of something I don't understand. And what scares me is not knowing whether the smart thing is to keep dismissing it, or to finally stop pretending it's nothing. Honestly, this has been with me for as long as I can remember. When I was little, it was more of a feeling than anything I could explain. Just this strange sense that something was there, even when I couldn't see it. As I got older, that presence became harder to ignore, and eventually I started thinking of it as this shadow figure that would show up just enough to remind me it hadn't gone anywhere. At some point, I gave him a name, Gerard. I think I did that because naming him made him feel a little less terrifying and a little more like this weird, intrusive presence that kept drifting in and out of my life. When I was younger, it mostly showed up in little things around the house. A cup would end up knocked over. My pets would refuse to go near certain corners. I'd find marks on the bathroom mirror after a shower, even when no one else had been home. Back then, I didn't really know what to do with any of it. I just knew it felt real. I think I was about 13 when I first actually started seeing him. We were living in an apartment then, and there was this narrow hallway that connected the bedroom area to the living room and the front door. I'd be walking back and forth getting ready or grabbing something, glance to the side, and there he'd be. A tall, dark figure just standing there. You know that moment when your brain doesn't process it right away, and then, suddenly it hits you and you look back? That was always how it happened. And every single time, he'd be gone the second I looked again. I told my dad once, and he brushed it off, saying maybe some random guy had wandered in. That definitely did not help. Then when I was 15, I had one of the clearest experiences I've ever had with him. He walked into my room, plain as day, and just stood there for a few seconds. Calm, still, watching. Then he turned, stepped into the hallway, and disappeared. No footsteps, no door, no sound at all. I remember calling my best friend immediately. She lived only a few minutes away, and I was panicking, telling her he had just been standing there looking at me and then walked out of sight like it was nothing. What always got to me most wasn't even when he stood in a room. It was when he'd lean his head around a doorway, like he was checking to see if I noticed him. That always felt like his way of saying, "I'm still here." And even though I never got the feeling he was evil, it scared me every time. Eventually, I got so used to it that I started talking back. I'd say, "Quit scaring me. Seriously, enough already." It sounds ridiculous, but after a while it felt less like I was dealing with something malicious and more like I was dealing with something curious, or confused maybe. Still unsettling, just not hateful. As I got older, I started reading more about shadow people, trying to make sense of any of it. But the truth is, I still don't know what he is. I don't know why he attached himself to me, or why it seems like he's been around since I was a little girl. My parents always knew weird things happened, but they're very traditional and religious, so trying to have a real conversation with them about it never really went anywhere. What's strange is that, even now, I don't believe this thing is harmful. Startling, yes. Annoying, absolutely. But not harmful. It's almost like he just wants to be noticed. Like he wants me to know he's there, and that's it. That's probably why I've never seriously tried to get rid of him. It's hard to explain, but it's like living with something odd in the background for so long that it becomes part of your normal. Not welcome exactly, just familiar. There is one memory from childhood, though, that still unsettles me more than anything else. I was about 5, and my grandmother was living with us at the time. We shared a room with 2 separate beds. One night I was trying to fall asleep when I felt something near me on the bed. I looked over and saw my pink stuffed rabbit, about the size of one of those big toy store plushies, moving toward me. Not falling, not shifting, moving, crawling almost. I froze. I couldn't even scream. And then my grandmother suddenly sat up, grabbed it without a word, looked at me, and threw it into the closet. The next day, she packed it away into a storage box. After that, she started playing a Spanish Christian radio station softly through the night while we slept. She never explained why. Years later, when I brought that night up to her as a teenager, she clearly remembered enough to not want to talk about it. She just shut down the conversation. My grandmother passed away a few years ago, and I still think about that moment a lot. especially because it was one of the first times I ever felt, deep down, that whatever had been around me was real. So back in 2019, I moved to a small town in eastern Oregon. I was a broke college student, and I ended up renting this tiny attic room in a huge old house that had been standing since the late 1800s. The rent was cheap, which was really all I cared about at the time. The other girls living there tried to warn me, though. They told me weird things happened in the house. I laughed it off. I figured they were just trying to mess with the new girl. At first, it was little things. I'd wake up in the morning and find the upstairs balcony door standing wide open, even though it was still locked from the inside. Sometimes chairs from the dining room downstairs would somehow show up in the hallway on the second floor. I honestly thought it was just my roommates pranking each other, or maybe forgetting where they'd moved things. Then Thanksgiving happened. There were 11 of us living in that house, and over the holiday, I was the only one who stayed behind. I woke up that morning absolutely freezing. The whole house felt cold in this strange, heavy way, so I went downstairs in my socks to turn up the thermostat. And while I was standing there pressing the buttons, I heard voices. 2 women talking nearby, like they were in the next room. I stopped and listened. One of them said, very clearly, "He's coming." I froze. I can't even remember what else they said after that, because those 2 words just hit me so hard. I went through the whole house looking for whoever was there, checking every room, calling out, but there was nobody. Not a single person. It was just me. I tried to convince myself I was overtired. I spent the whole day doing that, actually, trying to act normal and shake it off. That night, I was sitting in the living room with my roommate Mara's kitten curled up in my lap. I was just petting her, trying to relax. Then all at once, she went completely stiff. Every muscle in her body locked up. I looked up, and there, on the window, was this shadow. Not like a reflection, not like somebody standing outside. It was darker than black, almost like ink smeared across the glass. I stared at it, and I had this awful feeling that it was staring back at me. Then it moved, slowly, sliding across the window, and vanished. I called the only friend I had nearby, and I begged her to come sit with me, because I did not want to be alone in that house anymore. After that, things got worse. Anytime I went down into the basement, I felt like something was watching me. Not just a creepy feeling, really watching me. The basement had this strange, narrow hallway that twisted back toward a little apartment in the back, and we all jokingly called it the catacombs. One night, one of my roommates swore she saw a man standing down there. She called the police in a panic, but when they came, they couldn't find anyone. My attic room was shaped like this odd little triangle, and at night, I would hear what sounded like fingernails dragging slowly above my head. Long, deliberate scratches. Things would disappear from all over the house and never turn up again. One night, every fish in my roommate's tanks died at the same time, for no reason anyone could explain. I kept hearing whispers too, in different parts of the house, always too soft to make out clearly. It was like the house was always saying something, just never loud enough for me to understand. When the lease was finally up, every single one of us left. None of us wanted to stay another day. I told myself I'd never go back there. But the strange part is, sometimes I still feel pulled toward that house. If I'm in the neighborhood, I'll catch myself stopping outside without meaning to. And I just stand there, staring up at the window of what used to be my room. Like some part of me is still there, waiting. So, Here's something that happened to me that I still can't fully explain. A little context first. I take the train to work every day, and when I get home, I always put my work badge and transit card in the same place on my nightstand. It's just part of my routine at this point. The night before this happened, I remember doing exactly that. I set my badge down, and I placed my card right beside it before going to sleep. The next morning, I came home from class, planning to grab something quick to eat and then get ready for work. I looked over at my nightstand, and my badge was there, exactly where I expected it to be. But my transit card was gone. At first, I thought, okay, maybe I knocked it down in my sleep, or maybe it slid behind something. So I started searching. I checked under the bed, pulled things away from the wall, looked through drawers, moved furniture around, basically turned the whole room upside down. Nothing. I couldn't find it anywhere. Eventually, I gave up and figured I'd just buy tickets for the day. I wasn't panicking too much because I knew I had left it on the nightstand. I was sure of that. So I thought maybe after work, when I had more time, I'd come back and do a better search. Before I left, though, I asked my mom if she could take a look too. Honestly, I'm not exactly known for being great at finding things, so I thought maybe a second pair of eyes would help. Later on, I found out my mom searched my room really thoroughly. My dad even joined in for a bit. They checked under the bed, moved things around, went through the nightstand, and still found absolutely nothing. No card. Now here's the part that really got me. When I came back home that evening, my transit card was sitting right there on the nightstand. Not off to the side, not half hidden, not tucked behind something. It was right where I had left it the night before, completely visible, like it had never been gone at all. I just stood there staring at it. I even made my parents promise they weren't messing with me, because it honestly felt like the only possible explanation at that point. And look, I know this isn't some huge horror movie moment or anything, but I genuinely cannot explain it. I know what I saw. I know it wasn't there earlier, and I know my parents didn't find it either. So at this point, I'm left with this weird, unsettling feeling that something else was involved. In my faith, there's this belief in jinn, beings that are mysterious, playful, and sometimes known for causing mischief. And until somebody gives me a better explanation, I'm telling you right now, I'm blaming them. I've had 3 experiences in my life that I still can't fully explain, no matter how hard I try to convince myself they were just in my head. The first one happened when I was in middle school. We were all gathered for family prayer one evening, and everyone had their eyes closed, praying seriously. I was the only restless kid in the room, of course. I'd close my eyes for a few seconds, then peek again, just being nosy and unable to sit still. At one point, while I was sitting there, I suddenly felt something scratch the back of my heel. Not lightly either. It felt like actual fingers and nails dragging across my skin. I froze. My first thought was that my brother was messing with me, trying to scare me. But when I looked up, he was sitting right in front of me with everyone else. Nobody was behind me. Nobody was even close enough. Later, I asked him if he had done anything, and he just looked confused and said, "How could I? I was in front of you the whole time." And he was right. I remember just sitting with that feeling, trying to make sense of it. And then, eventually, like kids do, I let it go and forgot about it. Nothing happened again for years. The second experience happened when I moved into a hostel for school. It was my first time living away from home, so everything already felt a little unfamiliar. One laundry day, I put my clothes in the washing machine and went back to my room, since it usually took around an hour. When I returned, the machine was barely going, like someone had stopped it. I pressed start again and left. An hour later, same thing. It still hadn't washed properly. I restarted it again, waited again, and somehow the exact same thing kept happening over and over the entire day. By that night, I was exhausted and irritated. It was around 9:30, and the hostel doors were about to be locked until morning, so I finally gave up, left my clothes there, and went to bed. That night, I woke up because my room felt unnaturally cold. It was the middle of summer, so that alone felt wrong. I pulled my blanket closer and tried to ignore it, but then I heard a voice right near me, angry, harsh, and loud. It said, "Do you remember?" Half asleep, I assumed it was my roommate asking about the laundry, so I mumbled, "Yes," without even opening my eyes. But when I did open them, there was no one there. My roommate had gone home the day before. I was alone in that room. What scared me most was how real it felt. I could actually feel the breath of that voice against my neck. After that, everything got worse. I started getting sick out of nowhere. I couldn't eat properly, couldn't sleep, had fever, vomiting, stomach issues, and this constant anxiety that wouldn't leave me alone. It became unbearable. I decided I needed to go home. But while I was packing, I got so suddenly ill that I could barely even leave the room. The next day, I forced myself to go home anyway. My mom took one look at me and refused to let me return to that hostel for weeks. And when I finally did go back, it was only with her, just to move my things out. The third experience is the most recent one, and honestly, it still gives me chills. I have PCOS, and my doctor recommended that I start walking regularly and getting some exercise. So my dad started waking me up early in the morning to walk on the terrace of our apartment building. One winter morning, around 7, we were doing our usual walk. I was still half asleep, just wandering along and staring at the fog. I slowed down and stared a little longer. Then I realized it looked like a woman standing there, holding the window. I couldn't see her face clearly, just from the neck down. I'm naturally shy, so I avoided looking too directly and told myself maybe someone had rented the place and moved in quietly. But then, after a little while, I looked again and saw something that made my stomach drop. A dark hand with long, dirty nails was stretched out from the window in this strange, stiff position. I immediately looked away. My mom always says that negative things are drawn to people who are weak or unwell, and at that time, I hadn't been feeling my best, so I didn't want to keep staring at it. I avoided looking for as long as I could, but before I went back downstairs, I glanced over one last time. That hand was still there. Same unnatural pose, same stillness. The next day, I told my mom what I'd seen. She listened quietly and then said, "No one lives there." And that was the part I couldn't stop thinking about. Because if no one was living there, then who or what was standing at that window? So, right now, I'm actually sitting in my car outside the inn, running on almost no sleep, trying to process everything that happened last night. A little backstory first. My boyfriend and I both grew up in houses that always felt off. His childhood home was investigated more than once, and mine was this old colonial place that was well over 2 centuries old. So we've both always felt like we're a little more sensitive to paranormal stuff than most people. And honestly, last night really put that to the test. The second we checked into the Sadie Black room, I felt something brush past the back of my neck. At first, I tried to explain it away. I thought maybe it was the air kicking on, or maybe I was just getting in my own head because of where we were. Later that afternoon, around 4, we set up some of our ghost hunting stuff. We had the spirit box going, a small bell, and one of those light-up cat toys placed in a drawer. For a while, nothing major happened. Just a few little sounds here and there, like the doorknob giving a tiny jiggle and the old floorboards creaking. We kept telling ourselves it was probably just other guests moving around and the building settling. Then, before dinner, Probably around 5:30, I was in the bathroom washing my hands when the cat ball sitting on the vanity across from me suddenly lit up and started going off on its own. I stopped and just stared at it. When it turned off, I tried everything I could think of to recreate it. I tapped the counter, walked around it, even bounced a little to see if vibration would trigger it. Nothing. It stayed completely still. Later, during the basement tour, we found out that exact spot was supposedly tied to someone named Jonah, which made the whole thing feel a lot stranger. And that was really when the night started to shift. After dinner and the tour, we came back to the room, opened a bottle of wine, and tried the equipment again. Still, not much that felt like solid evidence. Eventually, we started getting ready for bed, and out of nowhere I caught this really distinct smell of perfume. At the same time, the cat ball on the floor started flashing, and the bell that had been quiet all evening suddenly rang. That was enough to seriously rattle me. My boyfriend, who was exhausted and way less reactive than I was, basically told me to calm down, close my eyes, and go to sleep. Around 11:30, he was fully asleep and snoring, and I had my head under the covers trying to ignore everything. That's when I started hearing this dragging sound above us, like something heavy being pulled across the floor in the attic and then set down. Not long after that, I heard footsteps out in the hallway. I woke him up, told him what I heard, and he just mumbled that I needed to go back to sleep. After things went quiet for a bit, I finally did. Then around 12:30, after maybe 15 or 20 minutes of sleep, I woke up again to that same perfume smell. I looked over, and the cat ball was going off over and over. At that point, I needed to use the bathroom, but I was genuinely scared to get out of bed. I finally forced myself up a little after 1. What made it worse was that I didn't feel like I understood whatever was in that room. My boyfriend had experienced way more intense things growing up, but for me, this felt unfamiliar, and that somehow made it scarier. The weirdest part was that when I walked right past the cat ball, it didn't react at all. Sometime around 3 in the morning, while I was finally asleep, he had his own experience. He told me he heard 6 hard knocks at the door, one after another, and then it sounded like someone rushed the door, like they were trying to push their way in. He said the doorknob started turning hard, like somebody was actually trying to open it, even though the door was locked. He just stayed there frozen, trying not to panic, and didn't wake me because he knew I'd completely lose it. Eventually that stopped. But then, he said the bed jerked in one clean motion and shook hard enough that there was no brushing it off. By around 3:35, the footsteps and the sounds at the door were still happening off and on. I woke up again, already panicking about the footsteps, and that's when he finally told me what had happened while I was asleep. And somehow, he was way calmer about it than I was. By 4, I was done, completely done. The knocks, the bed shaking, all of it felt wrong to me. Not playful, not harmless, just heavy and aggressive. I told him I didn't care if he was annoyed or tired. I was leaving the room. I wasn't about to stay in there waiting to see someone sitting at the edge of the bed. So now it's almost 8 in the morning. He's asleep in the passenger seat next to me, and I'm sitting here writing this, completely drained, trying to make sense of the most unsettling night I've had in a long time. That was my night at the Paranormal Inn. I want to tell you about something my coworker, Talina Cross, shared with me, because it has stayed with me in a way I can't quite shake. It carries that same quiet feeling of the unexplainable, but this one ended with a kind of peace. Talina lost her mother to cancer in September 2025, and ever since then, grief had been moving through her life in waves. She told me she'd dreamed of her mother a few times after the funeral, but those dreams always slipped away by morning. Then, on January 9th, 2026, something happened that felt completely different. Not just like a dream, but like a visit. She said it started in a place that felt so ordinary, so real. In the dream, everyone was gathered near a service station after church, the kind of place where people linger, talk, laugh, and catch up before heading home. Her younger sister was there too, standing with a few friends. Then her sister looked across the road, spotted her, and waved her over. "Cece," she called. And then she said something that instantly changed the whole feeling of the moment. "Nanku umama ofuna okuteta nawe." "Here's Mom, she wants to speak with you." That stopped her in her tracks. What made it feel even more real was how familiar it was. When her mother was alive, she used to call Talina's younger sister and then ask to speak to Talina through her phone. It was such a normal family habit that, in the dream, Talina didn't question it right away. She just walked over, took the phone, and held it to her ear. And then there was silence. A long, heavy silence. She told me you can't really explain what that feels like, waiting for the voice of someone you know you're not supposed to hear anymore. Finally, she spoke first. "Hello, Mommy," she said softly, using the name she always called her mother. Nothing. Then she tried again, stretching it out the way she would when teasing her. "Mommy." Still silence, but she said it didn't feel empty. It felt like her mother was there, listening, almost waiting, as if she wanted to see whether Talina was frightened or whether she was ready. In the background, her sister turned to her friends and said something like, "Yo, she's lucky she still gets to connect with people who've passed on." That struck Talina too, because in her family she's always been seen as someone especially sensitive to things like this. Even in the dream, it was like everyone understood that something unusual and sacred was happening. And then the voice came through. Not faint, not strange, not ghostly. Just her mother. Exactly her mother. Warm, familiar, alive in the way only a loved one's voice can be. She said, "Hi, bendifuna ukukushekanje, ntombiyam." "Hi, I just wanted to make you laugh a little, my girl." Talina said her whole heart lifted in that moment. "Ew," she answered right away. "Yes." Then her mother started telling her some funny little story about a woman in Silver Grove, the neighborhood where she had bought her first home many years ago. That place meant everything to their family. It was where so many memories began. Safety, home, childhood, belonging. So of course Talina asked the question anyone would ask. "Upi? Where are you?" And her mother answered simply, "Ndise Silver Grove. I'm in Silver Grove." The way Talina understood it, her mother was telling her she was somewhere familiar, somewhere good, back at the beginning, back in peace. Talina asked again, wanting to be sure, "Okay, you're really there?" And her mother said, "Ew, ndirai tapa." "Yes, I'm right here." Then she laughed. The call itself was short, almost casual, like one of those quick family check-ins that somehow mean everything. Then her mother said, "Bye-bye, Ka." And Talina answered, "Bye. I love you." Her mother replied with a plain, matter-of-fact, "Okay." That made Talina laugh even inside the dream, because it was so her. No dramatic goodbye, no long speech, just that simple, practical response, exactly the way she would have said it in life. But just before the call ended, there was one more thing. Another voice came through from the background on the other side of the line. Male, deep, gentle. Talina froze as she listened. The voice said, "Opbibile mple." "Are you finished, beautiful one?" And her mother answered, "Ew. Yes." Talina woke up immediately, and she knew that voice. It was her late grandfather. Now, of course, you could say it was just grief. You could say the mind does extraordinary things when it's carrying loss, and that would be fair. Dreams can be vivid, emotional, and deeply convincing. But this is the part that unsettled her, in the quietest way. The next morning, when she woke up, her house smelled different. Not bad, not alarming, just different. Familiar. The air carried the distinct scent of pipe tobacco. Her grandfather had been a pipe smoker for years. He'd been gone a long time, and nobody in her home smokes. Yet that earthy, unmistakable smell lingered through the house as though he had just passed through. She told me it felt like he had come to fetch her mother after that phone call, as though he had been there the whole time, waiting gently on the other side. What stayed with her most was how peaceful it all felt. There was nothing frightening in it. No chaos, no sense of intrusion, just comfort, just love. Just this brief, tender sense that the people we lose may not be as far away as we think. And honestly, when she told me the story, that was the feeling I was left with too. Like maybe sometimes love finds a way through. Like maybe, every now and then, the veil thins just enough for someone to say, in the most ordinary voice imaginable, "I'm right here." So, I want to tell you about the house I grew up in, because honestly, even now, I still can't explain some of the things that happened there. It was this old place way out in the country, built sometime in the late 1800s. I've always suspected it used to be part of an old farmstead, maybe even a creamery or something like that. Either way, it was isolated, creaky, and full of the kind of silence that makes every little noise feel important. If you count the basement and the attic, the house had 4 levels. There was the basement, then the main floor with the living room and dining room, then the upstairs where all the bedrooms were, plus a tiny study, and then the attic above that. It was a big, strange house with a lot of corners and shadows, and over the years, I had more unsettling experiences there than I can count. The first one that really shook me happened when I was 17. My parents had gone out for the evening, my 2 brothers were somewhere downstairs, and I was upstairs in the study. At some point, I needed to head down, and to get to the staircase, I had to pass my parents' bedroom, which sat right at the top of the landing. Their bedroom door was shut. I remember stepping onto the first stair, and right then I heard it, a woman's voice, low and urgent, from inside that room. She whispered, "Help me." Not loud, not dramatic, just scared, desperate. I froze for half a second, then turned around and shoved the bedroom door open, fully expecting one of my brothers to be in there trying to mess with me. But the room was empty. No one was there. That moment stayed with me, but what made it even harder to brush off was what happened later, when other people started describing the same woman to me without knowing each other's stories. The first was a friend of mine, Kyle. One day he casually mentioned that he'd seen a woman in the house more than once. Not just inside either. He said he'd caught glimpses of her outside too. He described her as white, with shoulder-length brown hair, kind of soft and slightly wavy, and wearing this purple dress that looked old-fashioned, almost elegant. He said there was something calm about her, gentle even. Then, sometime later, my former sister-in-law, Hannah, told me she had seen a woman in the attic. She gave almost the exact same description. Same hair, same purple dress, same feeling that the woman didn't seem threatening. She actually said the ghost felt sweet, which is not a word you expect someone to use in that kind of conversation. And then there was the night everything changed. I was with my friend Sienna and her little niece, Lily. We'd been hanging out late, and eventually I realized I needed to drive them home. We came back to my place first, and Sienna walked up to the enclosed porch ahead of me. She reached the door that opened into the dining room and just stopped, completely froze. I remember asking her what was wrong, and when she turned around, her face had gone pale. Her eyes were wide, and she leaned toward me and whispered, "Ben, I saw her." At first, I didn't understand what she meant. Then she started describing the same woman Kyle and Hannah had talked about, but this time, she said it was different. She said the woman didn't look kind. She said she looked furious, not just angry, violent. And then Sienna told me something I still hate thinking about. She said one side of the woman's face looked normal, but the other side, the skin was gone. Like part of it was just skull. She said the woman was moving across the dining room toward the basement door. I honestly thought Sienna was panicking or making it up. And the second I did, I saw the basement doorknob start rattling on its own, twisting back and forth, like someone on the other side was trying to come through. That was enough for me. I grabbed my keys, rushed Sienna and Lily to the car, drove them home as fast as I could, and then spent the whole night lying awake, staring at the ceiling, listening for every sound in that house. And to this day, I still don't know who or what was in there with us. This happened quite a few years ago now, probably around 2014 or 2015, but I still think about it all the time. I'm from Central Illinois, and if you know the area, or you're into paranormal stories at all, you've probably heard of Greenwood Cemetery in Decatur. It has a reputation for being one of the most haunted cemeteries around here, so naturally, I had to see it for myself. I planned the trip with 3 friends, Lena, Ryland, and Micah. We got there that night and managed to convince the caretaker to let us in around 9:30, after promising we'd be respectful, wouldn't touch or damage anything, and would be gone before midnight. At first, we just wandered through the cemetery, taking everything in. After a while, Ryland and Micah decided they wanted to split off and look for the Greenwood bride. The spirit people say appears in the cemetery after supposedly losing her fiancé on her wedding day. Lena and I stayed together and kept walking while those two went off on their own. Later on, the 4 of us met back up near this small mausoleum that, surprisingly, was unlocked. The name McCall was carved across the top, and for some reason I convinced myself there had to be some connection to some old family feud or local tragedy. Looking back, I was probably completely wrong, but at the time my imagination was running wild. Then Ryland came up with this idea that we should each go inside the mausoleum alone for 5 minutes with a voice recorder and see if we caught anything. It was tiny, just a narrow little space, maybe a few feet across and not very deep, so it felt unsettling the second you stepped inside. We all took turns. The first round didn't really give us anything, so I decided to try again. I put my phone on a small ledge, started recording, and began asking questions into the silence. There was one moment I'll never forget. I asked, "Is anyone here with me? Were you wronged?" Right after that, I heard 3 distinct taps on the wall behind me. I remember rolling my eyes because I was sure it was Micah messing with me from outside. I even said out loud, "Nice try, Micah. You're not creeping me out that easily." After that, I stopped the session and stepped back outside. A little later, we ended up walking through an older part of the cemetery where local veterans were buried, and that's when I decided to play back the recording. At first, it was just silence, exactly what I expected. But then I heard myself ask, "Were you wronged?" And right after that, there was this faint voice. It sounded like a child, barely above a whisper, saying, "They were cruel to me." I just froze. Then, almost immediately after that, there was another voice, a man this time, quiet but clear enough that it made my stomach drop. He said, "Behind you." And the part that still gets me is what came next. On the recording, Just after that whisper, you can hear Micah knock 3 times on the outer wall, behind me. When I realized the timing of it, it honestly made my whole body go cold. In the moment, I thought it was just my friend trying to scare me, but hearing that warning on the recording before the knocks happened, I still can't really explain that. We left around midnight like we promised, and none of us talked much on the way out. We were all pretending to be calm, but you could tell everybody was shaken. So yeah, we all went home that night with something. I've had a few other strange experiences since then, but nothing has ever felt as clear or as unsettling as what happened in that cemetery. That one has stayed with me ever since. Welcome back, everyone, to the Paranormal M channel. Still having trouble falling asleep? Don't worry, I've got you. Tonight, I'm bringing you mysterious stories from around the world to help you drift off and sleep better. Make sure to drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And a huge thank you for sending in so many incredible experiences. All right, no more waiting. Get cozy in bed, switch on your nightlight, and let's dive into tonight's chilling stories. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Hey, so this is my first time really telling this story out loud, and I'm a little nervous, but I'm going to try to say it the way it actually felt, moment by moment. For about the last 8 months, I've been in what I can only call an awakening. Not in a dramatic, movie way, more like something quietly rearranging itself inside me. I started with basic meditation, then mindfulness, then I fell down a research rabbit hole. The Hermetic principles became this framework I kept coming back to, and I started experimenting with different audio tracks, binaural beats, guided frequency meditations, that kind of thing. Weirdly enough, that was where I noticed the biggest shift. Like my body finally understood how to exhale. And here's the thing, I've always had a cautious curiosity about the occult. When I was younger, I'd mess around with astrology, go see a psychic once in a while, read about spirit stuff late at night. But I always kept one foot on the brakes because I was raised very Protestant. You know that voice. Don't invite trouble. Don't open doors you can't close. Then adulthood happened, and I tried to make evangelical Christianity work for me. For a while, it did. Kind of. It made me feel spiritually supervised, like I was being watched over, but by a school principal who's constantly disappointed. And as a gay man, that became unbearable. I spiraled into this cycle of shame that got dark enough that I knew I had to step away, because staying was turning into self-harm with a smile on top. But even after I stepped away, I couldn't just switch off the part of me that still felt aware. I still believed there was power in Scripture, and I still believed there were forces at play that we don't fully see. So I followed what felt like intuition. That's what led me back to meditation, specifically using sound to calm anxiety, and, honestly, to try to feel safe in my own body again. And it worked. Like, really worked. And the better my practice got, the more I noticed something else. These little coincidences that felt too targeted to be random. Not like voices in my head, more like reality nudging me. I started to think of it as guidance, gentle, consistent, benevolent, like something saying, yes, keep going, you're on the right track. Until this week, because for the first time, I felt something in my house that didn't feel gentle at all. So, context. My husband Marcus and I have had his mom Irene staying with us for a bit. And Irene and we've been clashing. Not yelling or anything dramatic, just this low-grade friction where you can feel it even when nobody is speaking. We were avoiding each other, and I started noticing something that honestly embarrassed me to admit. I couldn't stand going near the guest room. The energy around that door felt heavy, like walking past it made my stomach tighten. At first, I told myself, okay, Eli, this is you. This is your resentment. You're projecting. Be an adult. So we talked. Irene and I actually apologized, genuinely. We both said we wanted to move forward, and we meant it. But even after that, the weirdest thing happened. We both kept ruminating anyway, like we couldn't stop replaying things. It didn't feel natural. It felt sticky. Then 3 days ago, I'm tidying up and I find this homemade spirit board, like a DIY Ouija board, in my stepdaughter's room. Her name's Tessa. She's creative, always cutting out cardboard and making little projects. So at first I just went, okay, kid stuff. But it sat wrong in my gut. I didn't panic. I didn't lecture her. I just noted it. This morning, I finally brought it up to Marcus, and he had this look like he'd seen it too and decided to ignore it. He didn't want to give it power, but he also didn't like it. I got chills so fast it felt like my skin tightened, because in that exact second, a bunch of little pieces clicked together, and I knew something had been in our house. Not just bad vibes, not tension, something that felt opportunistic, predatory. And then I started replaying the emotional pattern between me and Irene. It was bizarre. I'd have days where I felt totally fine, peaceful, almost detached, and Irene would be down, drained, irritable. Then I'd have days where I couldn't stop obsessing over every reason I didn't like her, and she'd be cheerful, almost energized. It hit me like a disgusting little theory. What if something is bouncing between us? Like a parasite that doesn't care who it feeds on as long as it gets fear, anger, shame, anything dense. So that night, Marcus decided to cleanse the house. He didn't make it theatrical. No horror movie chanting. He just lit sage, went room to room, opened windows, and we both firmly said, out loud, that anything harmful was not welcome here. And that's when it happened. I felt it. Goosebumps, but sharper. A kind of static pressure, like the air thickened and leaned into me. My eyes filled with tears before I even understood why. It wasn't like I chose to cry. It was like my body reacted first. I stood there, shaking, and I said, "You need to leave. You are not welcome in this home." Irene called me to the guest room, and the second I stepped inside, it was like walking into a pocket of cold fog. I don't know how else to describe it. The room felt occupied, not by a person, by a presence. The walls felt wrong, like the space had been marinating in something for a while. And I didn't whisper. I didn't ask politely. I stood there and I spoke like someone who finally remembered they had authority in their own home. I said, "You're done. Get out. You can't stay here." And I swear to you, I felt the pressure shift, like something recoiled, like it didn't expect to be confronted. There was this distinct feeling of fear. Not mine, its, like it had been caught. And this is going to sound strange, but I started talking to it the way you'd scold a misbehaving kid. Not because I thought it was a kid, because I wanted it to understand. You don't negotiate, you don't bargain, you don't entertain. You name the boundary and you hold it. Irene had chills too. And there we were, me talking to the ceiling like a crazy person, and her looking at me with total trust, total belief, no mockery, no skepticism, just this quiet solidarity. When it finally felt like the room released, Irene and I hugged. And I mean a real hug. Not polite, not quick. We stood there holding on for a full minute like we'd both survived something we couldn't fully explain. After that, the grudge I'd been carrying felt lighter. Not magically erased forever, but like the compulsion to hate her had loosened. The room itself felt different too, less heavy, less charged. We talked to Tessa about the boards, calmly but seriously. We didn't shame her or scare her. We just explained that some games aren't neutral, and curiosity can invite things you're not prepared to handle. And she listened, like she truly got it. So yeah, I feel shaken, but I also feel empowered. More certain than ever that the spirit realm isn't some abstract concept. If it exists, it brushes up against daily life in subtle ways. In moods. In thoughts that don't feel like yours. In conflict that suddenly escalates for no reason. And I'm telling you this because I'm a logical person. I question things. I analyze things. I'm not looking for drama. But I know what I felt in my home. So, this is one of those memories that never really leaves you. It just kind of pops up every once in a while, usually late at night, and you're like, why am I thinking about this again? But I do. I was about 15, give or take, and my family had this big reunion at my great-uncle Ron's lake house. Beautiful place, classic summer vibe, people everywhere, food nonstop, kids running in and out. The only problem was there just wasn't enough room for everybody to sleep there. So Uncle Ron arranged another place, this small rental a couple houses down. He said it belonged to someone he knew personally, like it was no big deal. But here's the part that still feels strange to me. Out of my whole family, the only ones who ended up staying in that rental were me and my dad, Mark. Everyone else squeezed into the main house or found somewhere else. During the day, the rental seemed totally fine, normal even. My cousins came over and we played cards and messed around and raided the kitchen like kids do. Nothing felt off in the daylight, but the room I picked to sleep in had something in it. In the closet, kind of shoved into the corner, there was this life-sized figure, like a mannequin, but not one of those clean store mannequins. This one looked like somebody had tried to make it real. The head and hands were hard, almost like painted wood or resin. The body was soft and stuffed, dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt. It was slumped over like it couldn't hold itself up. And it had this face, strong features, and some kind of feathered headpiece. The whole thing reminded me of those old wooden Indian statues you'd see outside antique shops. It wasn't scary exactly, just weird, unsettling in a quiet way. I remember standing there thinking, why is this in here? And then brushing it off like, whatever, it's just a creepy decoration. That night, after dinner back at the lake house, laughing, eating, everyone lingering around the table, I walked back to the rental alone. The lake air was cool, and the road was dark and quiet. I remember thinking it felt peaceful. I went to bed, and then sometime later, I woke up. Or I thought I woke up. My eyes opened, and I was staring into the dim room, but I couldn't move. Not my arms, not my legs, not even my fingers. Nothing. I tried to shift my body and it just wouldn't respond. Like my brain was awake, but my body hadn't gotten the message. And then I saw him. That life-sized figure, the one from the closet, was standing right next to my bed, leaning over me. Arms stretched out toward me, like it was reaching. I can still remember the exact feeling of panic rising in my chest, because I wanted to jerk backward or scream or do anything, and I couldn't. And it looked like it was speaking. Its mouth wasn't moving like a normal person's, but there was this sense of words happening, like something being said right into the air between us. I couldn't understand it. It wasn't a language I recognized. It was more like sound without meaning. Then the room started to feel like it was spinning. Not in a dizzy, I stood up too fast way. More like The whole space was rotating around me. I squeezed my eyes shut, and behind my eyelids there were these swirling colors, bluish gray, like storm clouds twisting in water. And I swear I felt the bed sink, like someone sat down beside me. Then a hand, firm, deliberate, pressed onto my shoulder. That's the part that makes my stomach tighten even now, because it felt so physical. Not like a dream touch. It felt like weight, heat, a real hand. And then, suddenly, it stopped. Like someone flipped a switch. The room was still again. The air felt normal. I opened my eyes and the figure was gone. I could move. My body came back online all at once, and I sat up so fast I almost fell out of bed. I went straight to the closet, heart pounding, and there it was, slumped in the same corner exactly how it had been before. Not moved, not standing, just this lifeless, stuffed shape staring off into nothing. I did not sleep again. I left that room and went out to the living room, turned on the TV, and just sat there with it on, volume low, like the light and noise could keep something away. I stayed there until my dad woke up hours later, around dawn. When he came out, all groggy, I acted normal. I don't know why I didn't tell him. Maybe I didn't want to sound ridiculous. Maybe I didn't want him to brush it off. Or maybe I was afraid that saying it out loud would make it more real. Later, I told my cousins, and they just nodded like it wasn't surprising at all. One of them, Jenna, was like, "Yeah, that's why we didn't stay there overnight. Weird stuff happens in that place." I tried to get more out of them. Like, what weird stuff? What do you mean? But they wouldn't really explain. They just kind of left it there, like it was understood. That was more than 20 years ago now, and I still think about it sometimes. Not constantly, but enough that it stuck with me. Because here's the thing. If it was just sleep paralysis, I get it. I know that can happen, especially when you're overtired or in an unfamiliar place. But that hand on my shoulder, the bed dipping, the way it all felt so specific, I don't know. I'm not even saying it was supernatural. I'm just saying it felt like something. And I've never forgotten it. So, before I tell you this, you should know where I'm coming from. I live in a European country where people still do some pretty old-fashioned things. But I'm not the mystical type. I'm the show me the evidence type. No ghosts, no gods, no aliens, none of it. I'm usually the guy who can explain things away with a shrug and a rational theory. And yet, this is one of the only stories I've ever heard that keeps snagging in my brain because I can't fully untangle it. My best friend, let's call her Mira, has been in my life for years. She's one of those people who seems built out of competence. Master's degree, sharp as a blade, respected in her field, athletic, funny, the kind of person who somehow knows a little bit about everything. Films, music, politics, obscure documentaries, all of it. And she has that rare thing where you just feel better after being around her. But Mira also grew up with a kind of darkness that can leave a mark even on the strongest people. When she was little, her father changed after a serious car accident, like something in him snapped. He became violent, unpredictable. There were nights where it got so bad he nearly killed both Mira and her mother. And then, when Mira was around 10, he died in another crash. She and her mother weren't in the car, thank God, but still, you can imagine what that does to a child. In her family, there's also this old tradition. When someone dies, the coffin stays in the home until the burial. They did that for her father. And Mira, still a kid, had to live in that house with the coffin there, day after day, until the funeral. She doesn't talk about it often, but you can tell it lodged somewhere deep. I met her years later at university, and I got to know her mom, Elena, in that strange way you sometimes do with friends' parents. Whenever Mira went home for weekends, she'd come back, because she and Elena would almost always end up fighting. But then Elena would come visit Mira on campus, and she'd be charming, warm, social, smiling. The kind of person who can make you think, oh, she seems lovely, maybe it's just normal mother-daughter friction. Except it wasn't normal. Not really. Mira carried so much of it. She always excused her mom's moods, told herself Elena was lonely, told herself they only had each other. Even when the words got sharp, even when the fights got ugly, Mira would reset like nothing happened because she couldn't stand the idea of abandoning her. Until one weekend. She came back from that visit like she'd been scraped raw. She called me during the drive, nearly 3 hours, and I could hear it in her voice. Elena had crossed a line. Not just we argued, but mean for the sake of being mean. Picking apart everything Mira did, everything she was, like she was trying to dismantle her piece by piece. And the cruelest part? Elena threw out this accusation, basically saying Mira was becoming like her late father. That hit Mira like a slap, because Mira didn't choose her father. She didn't create any of that trauma. She survived it. And hearing her mother fling that at her felt not only unfair, but vicious. When Mira arrived, she showed up with a couple bottles of craft beer like, I need to talk until my throat gives out. We sat there while she replayed the whole fight in detail, exact sentences, exact moments. And then she said something I didn't expect. I'm done. I'm not speaking to her again. I'm not going back. And honestly, I was relieved. Not because I wanted her to lose her mother, but because I wanted her to stop bleeding for someone who kept cutting her. But you know how it goes with family, especially when it's just the two of you. A few weeks later, Mira went back, and then months passed, and one weekend Mira finally said, gently, carefully, do you know why I left? And Elena, completely blank, said, no. Why would you leave? Mira thought she was kidding at first. She wasn't. Mira said, because of the fight? The things you said? Elena stared at her like she was hearing a story about someone else. What fight? What things? So Mira went through it, line by line. The insults, the accusations, the way Elena tore into her. Nothing. No recognition. No shame. No, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Just confusion, like Mira was describing a movie plot. When Mira told me, I immediately went into my usual mode. Okay, if this isn't manipulation, what's the simplest explanation? My first thought was carbon monoxide. I've read enough stories, people hallucinating, losing time, acting strangely, because of a slow leak in a house. Elena spent most of her time in that big home she'd built with her husband. It was old, it was spacious, and she rarely stayed away for long. So I told Mira, promise me you'll check the house. She promised. They checked, and apparently, nothing. No carbon monoxide problem. That should have been the end of it. Weird, but not supernatural, just unexplained. Except it didn't end. This month, Mira and Elena went on a 10-day holiday together in another country. And it was fine. No fights, no sharpness. Mira sounded lighter than I'd heard her in ages. But when they came back, Saturday evening, back into the house, everything shifted again. On Sunday morning, Mira woke up to the television blasting downstairs. She got up, went down, and found Elena standing there too, wide-eyed, startled. Here's the thing. Elena wasn't watching TV. Neither of them had turned it on. Elena said, I didn't even plug it back in after the trip. And according to both of them, the TV was on. Sound booming, screen lit, like a channel was running, even though it was unplugged. I know how that sounds. I know. The first thing my brain did was try to make it smaller. A backup battery, a power strip, a misunderstanding, some kind of standby capacitor holding charge, anything. But Mira insisted the plug wasn't in the wall. Elena insisted too. And Mira, the most practical person I know, looked genuinely shaken while telling me. Like she wasn't trying to convince me, she was trying to convince herself she hadn't lost her mind. When I made my dumb little joke, something like, if your mom can run electronics without electricity, she should start a company, Mira didn't laugh. She just went quiet, and I realized she was actually scared. And then she added, almost reluctantly, she said it's happened before. Not once. Before. And because this was already drifting into the pile of things I didn't have a neat box for, Mira told me one more incident. A few weeks earlier, she was on the phone with Elena when she heard a loud crash, like glass or crystal slamming hard, and then Elena screamed. Elena had this big crystal ashtray on the table. She uses it for this little ritual thing she does with burning wood or herbs, like a cleansing. Mira says her mom has gotten more spiritual over the years, more into esoteric stuff. Anyway, the ashtray was sitting in the middle of the table, and according to Elena, it slid, like it traveled, across the table to the edge and fell to the floor. No one touched it. No pet bumped it. No one leaned on the table. It just moved. And Mira, who's lived through too much already, just wants answers, because the whole thing is starting to feel like the house itself has a mood, like something changes when you step back inside it. And me? I'm still me, still skeptical, still trying to find the simplest, most boring explanation that fits all the facts. But if everything Mira said is true, I'll admit it. It's hard to find a clean, logical explanation that covers all of it. And that's what makes it stick in my head. So, something really weird happened at my place earlier this week, and I still don't know what to make of it. A couple days ago, I was coming back from walking my dog, and as I'm unlocking the building door, my downstairs neighbor, her name's Marisol, stops me with this look on her face like she's been holding a question in all morning. She goes, "Hey, are you guys okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" She tells me that the night before, she and her husband, Raphael, and even their kids all woke up because they heard these insanely loud bangs coming from my apartment. Not like footsteps or someone dropping something once. She described it like someone was repeatedly slamming a heavy ball against the floor, over and over, right above their ceiling. The part that made my stomach twist is where she said it was coming from. She pointed to the section that's basically between my mom's room and my brother's room downstairs. Those rooms share a wall, so it's a pretty specific spot. According to her, it happened a little after 2 a.m., loud enough that they were ready to come upstairs and ring our bell. And then, suddenly, it just stopped. I just stood there blinking at her, because I genuinely had no idea what she was talking about. I told her, "Marisol, I fell asleep around maybe 1:30-ish. I didn't hear anything. I didn't wake up. Nobody told me anything." And it's true. My mom didn't wake up, and my brother didn't wake up either. Not even a, "Hey, did you hear that?" the next morning. Nothing. Like it never happened. Later, my mom even ran into Marisol and told her the same thing. We didn't hear a thing. So now we've got this situation where the people directly below us are jolted awake by loud impacts. But the people supposedly right next to the source are sleeping like rocks. That's what gets me. How does that make sense? And look, I'm not someone who immediately jumps to paranormal stuff. I want there to be a boring explanation. Pipes, some freaky building noise, whatever. But the way she described it, like controlled, repeated banging, doesn't feel like a random creak or settling. And as much as it sounds ridiculous to say out loud, if I had to place it somewhere in the unexplained category, my brain leans less ghost and more something like an abduction scenario. Because what else explains violent noise, people downstairs wake up, the people upstairs don't? It's like the sound happened without us being fully present for it. Okay, that's the first part. Here's the second part. The part that's honestly the reason I can't let this go. We live at the very top of our building. Our apartment is a duplex. Downstairs is where my mom and brother sleep, and upstairs is this big attic space that's basically my bedroom. The roof is right above me, so it can get super quiet up there. Quiet in a way that sometimes feels too quiet, you know? Last night I kept waking up and falling back asleep. Not fully rested, kind of drifting in and out. And at one point, I swear to you, I thought I woke up. But I also know I didn't. It was like my mind clicked on, but my body didn't come with it. In this not quite awake state, I get a message on my phone, like a real notification. It's from my brother, except in my version of reality, his name is Nico, and it's a photo. I open it, and my blood goes cold. In the picture, there's this small gray figure with a huge head peeking around the edge of Nico's bedroom door downstairs, like he caught it mid-sneak and snapped the photo fast. It's that classic gray alien shape. Big head, thin body, just there. I jump out of bed and start moving toward the attic stairs because all I can think is, I have to get downstairs. I have to get to them. But when I reach the doorway of my attic, this is the part that makes me feel insane even repeating it. I can't go through. It's like there's an invisible wall. Not a physical barrier, but a no, you can't kind of feeling. I'm pushing forward and I just don't pass. Everything looks normal. Same darkness, same furniture, same shapes in the room. But suddenly it hits me, crystal clear. This isn't my body. It's like I'm present, but not fully here. And the moment I think that, I do this weird test without even meaning to. I think about my bed, like picture it hard, imagine it, and instantly I'm back near it, like I got yanked across the room. No footsteps, no walking back, just snap, there. And then I try to wake up, and I can't. That's the scariest part. Not the alien photo, not the doorway thing. This feeling of being trapped between asleep and awake, like I'm pounding on a locked door from the inside. I remember thinking, okay, if I can't wake up, something bad is going to show up. Something is going to appear in the room. But nothing appears. The room stays the same. Still, quiet. So I start praying, and I need you to understand, I'm not religious. I don't pray. But in that moment I was begging, like, please, if there's anything good, anything protective, anything light, help me, intervene, get me out of this. And eventually, after what felt like forever but might have been seconds, I wake up for real. Morning light, normal silence, my heart still racing. First thing I do is grab my phone and look for the message. It isn't there. No WhatsApp, no photo, no what the hell is that text. Nothing from Nico at all, like it never happened. So on paper, it's easy. Nightmare, sleep paralysis, some weird half-dream hallucination. Fine, except it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like I was thinking clearly, like I was reasoning in real time, like I actually stood up, actually walked across my room, actually tried to leave, actually got blocked. It felt more real than most memories, and now my brain keeps looping back to the earlier banging incident. The night Marisol's family woke up and none of us did, and I can't shake the idea that my mind is trying to push something to the surface. Like there's a missing piece, and whatever happened that night, maybe I wasn't fully aware for it. Maybe something is trying to unlock a memory I don't have access to. I don't know. All I know is 2 strange events, back to back, both revolving around my home, and both involving this unsettling theme of things happening while I'm not fully able to respond. And it's messing with me. So, I've been doing paranormal investigations for a long time now. Close to 2 decades, give or take. It's funny because people hear that and assume I'm the guy who thinks every creak in the night is a ghost. But the truth is, I'm a skeptic first. That's always been my job, to walk into a situation and try to debunk it before I ever call it unexplained. My kids know what I do. They've grown up hearing me say things like, "That's probably airflow," or "Old plumbing makes that sound," or "Let's not jump to conclusions." And I keep them out of the investigations. Always have. I want them to feel like home is home, not a case file. My daughter, her name's Maya, is 11. She also lives with an anxiety disorder that makes speaking really hard for her in a lot of situations. So she watches, constantly. She notices details most people miss. And I don't know if it's because she spends so much time observing instead of talking, but she's incredibly intuitive. Like, she reads people in a way that can be unsettlingly accurate. She'll pick up on someone's mood before they even say a word. A couple months ago, we moved into a brand new townhouse in a totally new area. And I mean new. The kind of development where, not long ago, it was basically just open fields. Farmland, empty stretches of land, that kind of thing. The place itself is pristine. Fresh paint smell, clean lines, nothing creaky or old or obviously haunted. Which is why what happened next threw me. A few weeks after we moved in, Maya came to me, quietly, like she didn't even want to make it a big deal. And she told me she'd seen someone in her room at night. She said there was a tall, thin person standing over her bed, just watching her while she slept. At first, she thought it might have been her older brother, Ethan, who's 19, because it was the right height, the right shape for a person. But then she realized it wasn't him. She said it didn't have features, no face, no eyes, nothing. Just a figure made of shadow, like darkness had somehow pulled itself into a human outline. She told me she froze, like her whole body went cold and heavy. She squeezed her eyes shut, and when she finally worked up the courage to open them again, it was gone. Now, normally, I'd go straight to the obvious explanations. Sleep paralysis, hypnopompic hallucination, that weird half-awake space where your brain is still dreaming, but your eyes are open. And that's exactly what I told her, gently, not dismissive. I said, it might have been a dream that leaked into waking. But she wasn't convinced. She didn't argue, she just looked at me like, no, I know what I saw. And we kind of left it there. Then, about a week ago, she told me it happened again. This time, it wasn't hovering over her bed. She said she woke up in the middle of the night, wide awake, because she couldn't fall back asleep. And as she lay there, staring toward her bedroom door, she noticed something standing just outside it. Again, shadow, no features. But she said what scared her more than the shape was the feeling, this heavy, unmistakable sensation that it was aware of her, that it was watching. And here's the part that made my stomach drop. She said this one looked wrong, like the head was too big, enlarged. Not comically big, just enough to feel unnatural, like it didn't belong on the body. Like someone took a normal silhouette and stretched it in the worst possible way. And she told me, very clearly, I wasn't dreaming. I was awake. Here's the thing about Maya. She doesn't lie, and she doesn't like attention. She's not the kind of kid who would spin a scary story just to get people hovering around her. If anything, she'd rather people forget she's even in the room. So when she tells me something like this, I don't brush it off. I believe she's experiencing something. I just can't figure out what. So while the kids were away for a few days, I did what I never wanted to do in my own home. I brought my team in. Kept it low-key, minimal gear, just enough to see if there was anything obvious we could rule out or confirm. And we didn't get the kind of evidence people hope for. No dramatic voices on command, no slamming doors, nothing like that. But we also couldn't cleanly debunk it. We did catch a couple mild temperature oddities on the FLIR, little pockets of cooler air that moved in a way that didn't fully match vents or drafts, but nothing strong enough that I can point to it and say, that's it, that explains everything. It was more like a quiet shrug from the house. I still haven't reviewed all the audio yet, and honestly, part of me is dragging my feet because I know how this goes. 99% of the time, it's nothing, and the other 1%? It changes the way you feel walking down your own hallway in the dark. Now I'm stuck in this uncomfortable middle space, because the practical part of my brain says, new place, new stress, weird sleep, anxiety, shadows in a hallway, your mind filling in gaps. But the parent part of me, the part that's seen enough strange things to not laugh too quickly, keeps circling back to the same question. Why does my daughter describe it the same way every time? Tall, thin, made of shadow, watching. And then that second detail, the one with the head that didn't fit right. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out if anyone else has heard descriptions like that. Shadow figures that present as tall and narrow, or tall with something off about the head shape. Normally, I'd be tempted to wire the place up with trail cams and audio recorders and just let it run. But I won't do that while my kids are here. I refuse to turn their home into an investigation set, especially when Maya already feels on edge. So right now, I'm looking for ideas that are quieter, less invasive. Things I can do that don't make my kids feel like they're living inside one of my cases. And I'll be honest with you, more than anything, I just want Maya to feel safe in her room again. Because whether this is paranormal, psychological, or something we haven't named yet, the fear she felt was real, and that's the part I can't ignore. So, this happened a long time ago, and I still get that weird, tight feeling in my chest when I talk about it. It was back in 2008, when I was in my early 20s. I used to crash at my buddy Dylan's place pretty often, like at least once a month. He lived with his mom in this busy, always full kind of house. You know the type. Siblings, cousins, kids running in and out, somebody always cooking something, somebody always sleeping somewhere they didn't plan to. They'd even expanded the house over time. The garage had been converted into a little living space, and they'd added a hallway with a few newer bedrooms on the side, basically to make room for how much family was under that one roof. I was close with all of them, so it never felt like I was visiting. It felt like I belonged there. One night, Dylan and I were up late playing games. At some point, I passed out on the couch in the front room with the TV still glowing. That room connected to the kitchen, but there was this partial wall between them with doorways on either side, so you couldn't see the whole kitchen from the couch, but you could definitely hear everything. And that's what woke me up. I hear pots and pans clinking in the kitchen, like someone's digging around, maybe trying to be quiet, but not really succeeding. My first thought was, one of the kids is up getting a snack. Totally normal for that house. So I just lay there, half awake, listening, waiting for it to stop. But then I hear this creaking sound. Not from the kitchen, closer. Like it's coming from the wall right behind the couch. My back was to that wall, and the sound felt like it was moving, sliding along the wall, slow, deliberate, getting nearer. I remember holding my breath without meaning to. When the creaking reached about where I was, I opened my eyes. And I swear to you, there was this dark figure standing near the kitchen doorway. Not a person, not a trick of light, just a tall black shape, like someone cut a hole in the air and it was shaped like a man. I couldn't look away. And then the worst part hit, this heavy pressure on my chest, like somebody sat down on me. Breathing got hard, like my lungs couldn't expand all the way. And when I tried to move, I couldn't, not even a little. I couldn't sit up, couldn't lift an arm, nothing. I was just stuck there, staring at it. And in my head, I'm yelling, "Move, move, move." But my body wasn't listening. After what felt like forever, probably only a few seconds, I finally snapped out of it. Like the paralysis cracked all at once. I shot up and I just reacted, pure instinct. I ran straight toward the doorway like, "Nope, not doing this," and I started yelling, like actually yelling, storming around the kitchen like I was going to chase it out. Then I ran to Dylan's room and started pounding on the door. He opens it, sleepy and annoyed, and I'm rambling a mile a minute, trying to explain what I just saw. He listens, kind of calm in this way that made me feel even crazier, and he goes, "I'll tell you more in the morning." That's all he said. Which, like, excuse me? More? More means there's a whole story behind this. I didn't sleep after that. I sat up the rest of the night, controller in hand, trying to act normal while the house stayed quiet. Eventually morning came, kids getting ready for school, adults moving around for work. When Dylan's sisters saw me up early, they asked why I looked so wrecked, and I told them what happened. I just stared at her like, "I'm sorry, what?" Apparently, I wasn't the first one. Not even close. Later, when Dylan finally got up, he told me the family had been seeing things for years. A shadowy man, sometimes just a shape, sometimes like it was peeking around corners. And also, yeah, a little girl. And then he said something that really stuck with me. He told me they'd noticed the shadow figure would show up near the older parts of the house and would linger by the doorways to the newer rooms, but never actually go in. His family had this theory that it was somehow tied to the original house, like it couldn't cross into the newer addition, like it was anchored to what the house used to be. I didn't know what to do with that information, because it sounded insane, but also, it matched what I'd seen. The doorway, the way it stayed right there. Then Dylan goes, "We should check the cameras." They had security cameras set up around the place, kitchen, front entry, and down the back hallway. And the footage recorded onto this weird little cassette thing, not a normal VHS, but like a smaller, chunky cartridge that slid into a recorder. So we watched. And the footage shows me on the couch, staring toward the kitchen doorway. You can clearly tell I'm focused on something. Then it shows me bolt up, rush forward, and run into the kitchen, then sprint toward Dylan's room. But the camera didn't catch the figure. Nothing, just empty air. Still, watching myself react like that on tape was creepy in its own way, because it meant I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't imagining it. My body had been responding to something. Dylan kind of shrugged it off like, "Yeah, the house does that sometimes." Like it was a rite of passage. Like the house was introducing itself. We went about the day, lunch, classes, trying to pretend we weren't rattled. But when we came back that afternoon, his dog, this mellow, sweet Siberian husky named Koda, was losing his mind. Running in circles, barking, snapping at the air, totally out of character. We immediately thought, someone broke in, because it was one of those barks, alarm bark. So we rewound the camera footage again, expecting to see a person. And instead, we saw an orb. I'm talking a bright, floating ball of light, about the size of a baseball, drifting through the living room and kitchen like it knew exactly where it was going. And Koda was tracking it perfectly. Not random dog barking at nothing. He was chasing it like it was a toy he could actually see. The orb glided down the hallway toward the newer rooms. So we switched to the hallway camera. And on that angle, we watched it float straight toward this lamp sitting on a computer desk. The lamp was off. The orb moved right into it, and the lamp clicked on. Just lit up the entire hallway, like someone flipped the switch. Koda ran down there right after it, confused, searching, sniffing around like, where did it go? Then he backed out into the main area again. A second later, the orb comes back out of the lamp, and the lamp turns off. Then the orb drifts toward the living room again. Koda sees it, chases it, and it darts back into the hallway and back into the lamp. The lamp clicks on again. Koda runs down, can't find it, backs out again. We're on camera pointing at the husky, like, why is he acting so weird? We walk to the monitor to check the footage, and we end up watching ourselves come home moments after the orb had been flying around. We all just stood there, quiet, staring at the screen. Then we slowly turned and looked down the hallway, at the lamp, like maybe, if we looked long enough, it would do it again. Like we could catch it in the act with our own eyes, not just on tape. Nothing happened. Just a regular hallway, regular lamp, regular quiet. But I was buzzing, half terrified, half exhilarated. Because as much as that first night freaked me out, this was different. This was proof. And it kills me that it happened in the era of flip phones and grainy cameras. If it happened now, I would have recorded the screen in 2 seconds. But back then, the best I could have done was take a blurry picture of the lamp off, then on, which would have proven absolutely nothing. So all I've got is the memory of it, and the way 3 grown adults stood in a hallway afterward, staring at a lamp like it had just spoken to us. So, my mom, Marilyn, died on June 10th, and I'm still getting used to saying that out loud. I'm an only child, and she wasn't just my mom. She was my safe place, the person I could tell anything to without feeling judged. She had this way of listening that made you feel like you weren't too much, or dramatic, or silly. You were just you, and she loved you anyway. Honestly, my friends adored her too. She basically collected them. Like, once you came over a couple times, boom, congratulations, you're now one of her kids. She'd feed everyone, fuss over everyone, and somehow make you feel like you belonged. When she passed, it didn't just knock the wind out of me. It hit all of us. At the time, she was living in Tulsa, and I'm up in Wisconsin, so visits weren't as often as either of us wanted. But when we did get together, it was the best. And at night, when things got quiet and we'd finally settle in, we had this little ritual. We'd put on the Great British Baking Show and just melt into the couch. I was the one who got her hooked, and then she got really hooked. Like rewatching seasons, picking favorite bakers, laughing at the same jokes like they were new every time. It was our comfort show. The night she died, I knew I couldn't get down there right away. I was a mess, ugly crying, snotty tissues, the whole thing. And I didn't know what to do with myself. So I did the only thing I could think of. I turned on the TV and started watching things that reminded me of her. My partner, Evan, sat with me through it all. We watched Bohemian Rhapsody, then Rocky Horror, then the Blues Brothers. Stuff she would have totally been into. Stuff that felt like her energy was still in the room. After that, we just kind of stared at the screen like, okay, now what? Evan suggested Chopped because it's easy background noise and it doesn't demand your whole heart. So I opened Discovery Plus, turned it on, put the remote down on the couch beside me. And I swear to you, maybe 30 seconds go by, not even a full minute, and Netflix pops up on the TV. Just launches, like it decided on its own. I froze, stared at the screen. Then I actually laughed through my tears because it felt so pointed. And I said out loud, "All right, Mom, I get it. We'll watch British baking." So I put it on, and I sat there feeling that weird mix of heartbreak and warmth, like someone had just tucked a blanket over my shoulders. Here's the thing. I've had that TV for years. It has never flipped apps randomly. To get to Netflix, you either have to hit home and scroll over, or press the dedicated Netflix button on the remote. It's not an easy, oops kind of thing. And that TV has run Discovery Plus a million times without doing anything like that, before or since. Then, a little later, maybe a couple weeks after, life was doing that thing where it keeps moving even when you feel like you're stuck in the same moment. I called my stepdad, Ray, just to check on him. He's down in New Mexico with family now, and he and Mom had been together almost 23 years. His health isn't great, and I worry about him more than I probably say out loud. We had a good talk, one of those calls that's comforting and heavy at the same time. The rest of the day was normal in that exhausting way normal becomes when you're grieving. On top of everything, I'm packing up my house because I'm moving soon. One of those moves that makes you realize you own like 47 random cords and a suspicious number of mugs. I sit down. 30 seconds later, Netflix pops up again. I whipped around so fast I almost knocked my chair over. I looked at Evan, thinking maybe he hit the button as a joke. But he's dead asleep, snoring like he's auditioning for a lumberjack competition. The remote is untouched on the table. No one moved. Nothing bumped it. The dog is laying there being innocent and thumbless. And I just stared at the screen and said, Okay, Mom, we'll watch our show." So I put on the Great British Baking Show again, and I felt it, that same strange, gentle feeling, like she was close, like she just wanted to sit with me for a while, the way we used to. Look, I'm not someone who thinks every creak is a ghost. I'm annoyingly logical most of the time. I know dust can look like orbs. I know houses settle, pipes knock, electronics glitch. I know all of that. But twice, only twice in all the years I've had that TV, it switched itself from Discovery Plus to Netflix right after she died, right when I needed her most, right when our show was the one thing that still felt like us. So I don't know. Maybe it's a freak coincidence. Or maybe it's just my mom checking in, like, "Hey, I'm still here. Put the kettle on. Let's watch baking." So, I'm going to tell you this like I'd tell a friend sitting across from me, because that's the only way I can get through it without laughing at myself or getting chills. I've been trying, genuinely trying, to come up with a reasonable explanation for these noises in my house, and I keep hitting the same wall. Nobody can get in. It's just me and my parents who have keys. That's it. We live in a 2-story place, but it's a little unusual. The downstairs isn't connected to where we sleep. It's basically its own separate unit, like 2 homes stacked on top of each other. My grandpa used to live down there, but he passed away in April, and since then, it's been empty. We cleaned it out, we go down there almost every day, we store things there, So it's not abandoned exactly, but nobody sleeps in that space anymore. A few months back, my mom, Lena, told me she woke up in the middle of the night and heard that unmistakable sound, a chair dragging across the floor downstairs. That rough scrape, like someone's shifting their weight and pulling it back an inch. My dad and we brushed it off. We teased her a little, told her grief can play tricks, that she was probably half asleep and hearing things because she missed him. I feel kind of bad about that now, because last night, I heard something too. I woke up suddenly, checked my phone without thinking, and it was 4:27 a.m. I remember because I stared at the screen like, of course it's this hour. And then, a few minutes later, 4:30 exactly, I heard this heavy thud from downstairs. Not a creak, not a settling noise, a thud like a door being shut hard or something solid being dropped on the floor with intention. And here's the part that makes my stomach tighten. We don't have pets. No cat knocking something over. No dog pacing around. Nothing. And since the downstairs is separate from where we live, it's not like someone could have been sleepwalking and bumped into something. There's a locked outer door, then another locked door. It's very much closed off. Today in the afternoon, I went down there. I did this whole slow walkthrough like I was trying to prove to myself I was being dramatic. I looked at the chairs, the doors, the windows, the furniture. Everything was exactly where it had been the last time I was down there, like the space hadn't been touched. No signs of anyone being inside. No drawers opened, no mess, no broken lock, no feeling of a break-in. So I'm standing in that quiet, clean room and I'm thinking, then what did I hear? And I'm not proud of how this sounds, but I got goosebumps just telling you about it. Because the logical part of me is like, okay, old houses make noise, temperature changes, pipes, building settling. But the other part, the stubborn, scared little part, keeps whispering, what if it's not that? And I hate that I even think that, because I'm not the spirits and signs type. I've always been the skeptical one. I'm basically an atheist. Even if the idea of nothing after death unsettles me sometimes, I still struggle to believe there's anything beyond this. But I've had experiences that mess with that certainty. Not constantly, not like I'm walking around predicting the future. Just enough weird, specific things that stick in my mind and refuse to let go. 2 months later, the neighbors living in the unit below accidentally started a fire. It didn't burn my grandma's place down, but smoke poured up through the building and left parts of her apartment stained and blackened. When my family was talking about it afterward, I was just sitting there, quiet, because I didn't want to be the kid who says, I dreamt that. And then there were dreams that weren't disasters, just eerie. I once dreamt I was talking to my grandpa after he'd died, like we were casually catching up. We were standing on a balcony I didn't recognize. He looked healthy, calm, dressed in this pale, almost glowing outfit, like soft white clothes you'd wear on a warm evening. The whole thing felt gentle, not horror movie creepy. He asked about me, the normal stuff, how I was doing, if I was eating well, if I was okay. And then right before the dream ended, he got more serious and said, we don't have much time. Tell me, did you find someone good to share your life with? And I woke up crying, which shocked me because it had been years. I wasn't actively grieving anymore. But it felt like I'd just spoken to him, like I'd been given 5 minutes and then yanked back into waking life. And it's not only dreams. Sometimes it's little coincidences that pile up until they feel less like coincidence. Like I'll think intensely about an old friend I haven't spoken to in ages, someone I haven't even seen on social media, and then later that day, they'll message me out of nowhere. Or I'll be in the middle of work, distracted, not even waiting for anything, and my mind will suddenly land on my partner, Mara, like a clear bell ringing. And then, minutes later, her text pops up. I've read the explanations. I've seen the confirmation bias argument, how you remember the times it matches and forget the times it doesn't. And that makes sense. It does. I get it. But the problem is, it doesn't feel rare. It feels frequent enough that I can't fully shrug it off. So when something downstairs goes thud at 4:30 in the morning, in a locked, empty space that used to belong to someone we loved, my brain does this awful split-screen thing. One side goes, house noise, settling, wind pressure, pipes, a door not fully latched, temperature shift. The other side goes, okay, but what if it's him? What if it's something? And if I entertain that thought for even a second, if I say, fine, let's pretend it's his spirit, then I immediately run into a question that makes me even more unsettled. Why? Because it doesn't make sense to me. It's not like he was some prankster in life. He wasn't dramatic. And the idea of a loved one's spirit spending the night, moving a chair or slamming a door, it feels almost insulting, like turning a real person into a cheap ghost story. And yet, here I am, telling you all of this, because I want an explanation so badly that I'm willing to admit I'm scared. Not because I believe something supernatural is down there, but because I can't prove that it isn't. And I don't know what's worse, the idea that it's something, or the idea that it's nothing, and my own mind is the thing making the house feel haunted. Okay, so this happened a few years back, maybe 5 give or take, and I can still feel that weird, prickly feeling in my skin when I think about it. Back then, I was deep into paranormal stuff, like not just casually curious, obsessed. I'd watch videos late at night, read forum stories, try to connect dots that probably weren't meant to connect. And then I'd lie in bed afterward, wide awake, replaying everything in my head until my imagination basically turned my room into a horror movie set. My family wasn't into any of that. My dad would roll his eyes, and my mom, Marisol, was the most firm about it. She kept telling me, stop filling your head with nonsense. She didn't believe in ghosts at all. But demons? That was different. We're Catholic, so to her, if anything did exist, it wouldn't be some playful spirit. It would be something darker. Something you don't invite in. And here's the part I hate admitting. I wanted to prove something. I wanted some kind of sign, anything, that said, see, it's real. I didn't do a ritual or a Ouija board or anything like that, but I was always thinking about it, always focusing on it, like I was daring the universe to respond. Then little things started happening. On nights when I couldn't sleep, I'd hear soft footsteps, light and quick, like someone was padding through the hallway. Not heavy, not creaky floor obvious, just there, enough to make me sit up and listen. My 2 younger brothers, Nico and Teo, were just as skeptical as my parents, but even they started noticing weird stuff. A faucet would turn on by itself. A door would drift shut when nobody touched it. They'd complain. My parents would shrug and say, draft, or old plumbing, or you're imagining it. And then we adopted our dog. His name was Bruno. Big black lab, sweet as anything. The kind of dog who leans his whole body into you like he's trying to melt into your ribs. At first, we all relaxed a bit because, honestly, having a dog in the house just makes things feel safer. But Bruno started doing this thing at night. He'd stand in the main room, staring into the dark like it had offended him personally. and he'd bark. Not playful barking, not "someone's at the door." It was sharper, angry, like he was warning something to stay back. And the creepiest part was that there was never anything outside. No footsteps on the stairs, no neighbor walking by. Just Bruno, locked onto empty darkness. And then came the night I'll never forget. My parents were downstairs talking with the neighbors. One of those long chats where they're half laughing, half complaining about daily life. Nico and Teo were in the main room with Bruno, and I was in the side room right next to it. The one where you can hear everything, but you're not fully in the middle of it. Bruno started barking again. But this time, he wasn't looking into the main room like usual. He was facing the kitchen doorway, the open space connecting the kitchen to the main room. I remember feeling my stomach drop, like my body sensed something before my brain caught up. And then, this sudden movement. Fast, like a blur at the edge of my vision. I didn't see a full shape, not clearly, but I saw something shift, like air turning into a presence for half a second. And immediately after that, there was a loud, solid bang. Not a tiny noise, not a creak, a real impact. A second later, Bruno and my brothers came running into the side room where I was. Nico looked pale. Teo was talking too fast, and Bruno was whining in this low, upset way I'd never heard from him. They were like, "Did you do that? Did you hear that? What was that?" And then they told me what happened. Bruno wouldn't go near it afterward. He stayed back, stiff-legged, hackles raised, barking at the chair like it was alive. My brothers were swearing they didn't touch it. I believed them, because they looked genuinely scared, and they weren't the type to prank. If anything, they hated my paranormal phase and would have loved to prove me wrong, not feed into it. When my mom called a little later, we told her, and for once, she didn't brush it off. I think Bruno's reaction did it. Seeing an animal refuse to approach something, acting like it's cornered by an invisible threat. It hits different than a kid saying, "I heard a noise." Marisol came up, turned the lights on, said a prayer, blessed the rooms, the whole thing. She didn't yell, but she was serious in that quiet way that makes you behave. Then she sent us all to bed like it was a school night and she could schedule fear for later. None of us slept normally. My brothers locked their door and stayed awake, whispering. I laid there listening to every tiny sound, wondering if I'd somehow brought something into our home just by obsessing over it, by wanting it too much. After that, the weird events faded. Slowly, then completely, like whatever it was got bored, or got pushed out, or maybe it was never there to begin with, and we all spiraled together. I don't know. I just know that chair moved in a way I still can't explain. Bruno stayed with us for years after, right up until recently. He developed epilepsy this past year and passed away. Nothing mysterious about it, just life being unfair in the regular, heartbreaking way. But I still think about him standing in that dark room, barking at nothing, like he could see what we couldn't. And now that enough time has passed, I can finally talk about it without feeling like I'm inviting it back. Part of me wants to call it a poltergeist, because, a chair sliding across the floor toward a dog? That sounds like textbook something messing with the environment. But if you think there's another explanation, something spiritual, psychological, anything, tell me. I'm genuinely open. I just don't love the idea that my curiosity might have been the door. Hey, so this happened to me in early 2020, right before the world flipped upside down. Back then, I was working as a delivery driver for a courier company. Been on the job about a year, and they'd just expanded my route to include the downtown stretch of the city. And look, downtown was downtown. The kind of place where you learn to keep your head on a swivel. I grew up not far from there, so it wasn't like I was easily spooked. I'd seen fights, overdoses, people sleeping wherever they could, sirens at all hours, stuff that becomes background noise when you're in it long enough. So that day, I thought it was just another shift. I was moving fast, honestly. I knew my streets, I knew my stops, and I was feeling good on time. Then I got a delivery I hadn't done before. This church on a busy main road. I knew the area too. Lots of tents a few blocks over, lots of people drifting around. That detail matters because it's part of why I did what I did next. I pulled up around maybe 1:45 or 2 in the afternoon, parked the truck, locked it, habit, and grabbed the package. Needed a signature. Simple. And I'm not a church guy, not really. Long story, but religion was shoved down my throat growing up, and I kind of backed away from it as an adult. Still, work is work. I walked up to the entrance, and the first weird thing was that the huge double doors were wide open. Like, wide open. Not cracked. Not someone just stepped out. Fully open. At first I shrugged it off. I figured maybe they were doing some outreach thing, letting people come in, cool off, grab food, whatever. Churches do that sometimes. Inside, there's this entry area with this massive mirror, floor to ceiling, right in front of me. And beyond it, another set of doors that looked like they led into the main sanctuary. So I do what I always do. I raise my voice and go, "Hello, delivery. I've got a package that needs a signature." Nothing. I call out again. Still nothing. To my left, I spot a little alcove that's clearly bathrooms. To my right is this hallway that's dark. Like, dark. And it bends left at the end. I tell myself, offices are probably back there, so I start down that hallway. And as I'm walking, I keep announcing myself. Not just to be polite, but because you don't want to startle someone, or worse, bump into someone who didn't expect you. I hit the bend, turn left, and the light drops even more. It's not just dim, it feels like the hallway is swallowing sound. I remember getting this faint prickle on my neck, but I tried to laugh it off in my head. It's a church. It's quiet. It's old. Whatever. Then I noticed light leaking from underneath a door ahead, off to the right, like someone left a room lit. I move toward it and push through. And I end up in this little courtyard. Not pretty, not peaceful, just neglected. Dried flowers in sad, dusty planters, dead leaves, cracked stone, that sort of no one's been out here in a long time vibe. Across the courtyard there's another building, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe staff offices are in there. So I walk over and open the door. Pitch black. Not low light. Not my eyes need to adjust. Pitch black. I call out again, "Delivery, anyone here?" and step inside. And the second the door swings shut behind me, it's like the darkness doubles. I can't even see my own hand. So I pull out my phone and turn on the flashlight. Just this small cone of light in a whole room of nothing. Straight ahead, I see what looks like a fire exit sign, and to the left, there's another hallway. I start edging toward the left hallway, still calling out. Quieter now, because I'm not trying to announce myself to someone hiding. And then, bam! A door slams somewhere deeper inside, and then another slam, like a quick, angry punctuation. My whole body tenses, my stomach drops. Every part of me goes, nope. And in that split second, my mind starts running scenarios. Maybe it's a person living in here. Maybe it's someone who doesn't want to be found. Maybe I just walked into something dangerous and now they know where I am. So I back out. I decide, if they want the package, they can come to the front. I am not playing detective in a dark building. I go back through the courtyard and into the original hallway, moving fast but trying not to outright run. And this is the part that still makes my throat tighten when I think about it. As I'm heading back toward the lobby, the feeling changes. It's not just fear anymore. It's grief. Like this heavy wave rolls over me out of nowhere. My arms feel weighed down. My chest feels tight. And it honestly felt, this sounds dramatic, but it's the closest description I have. Like something put its hands on my shoulders. Not in a grab way, more like a pressure, like being pressed down. I remember thinking, why do I feel like I'm walking through mud? Like the air turned thick, like each step took effort. And the dread, this deep, hopeless dread, just poured in, like it belonged there and I didn't. And then, nothing. No fade to black. No, I passed out memory. Just a blank cut in the film. The next thing I remember, I'm sitting in my truck, not outside the church. I'm parked in some random neighborhood about half a mile away. The package is sitting on the passenger seat like it never left my hands. I'm drenched in sweat, and I'm crying. Like full-on, can't catch my breath crying. And I'm not a crier. I'm just not. But in that moment, I felt absolutely wrecked. Like everything was pointless. Like I'd been hollowed out. The kind of sadness that doesn't even have a reason. It's just there, swallowing everything. So I grab my phone with shaking hands and check the time. It's close to 3, and I realize I'm missing almost an hour. An hour I cannot explain. I don't remember walking back out. I don't remember getting into the truck. I don't remember turning the key, pulling away, driving through streets, stopping where I stopped. Nothing. Just this jump from dread-filled hallway to me sobbing in the driver's seat somewhere else. I called my girlfriend. Her name's Marissa. And then I called my best friend, Theo, because I didn't know what else to do. I needed to hear a voice. I needed someone to tell me I was real and I wasn't losing my mind. And to this day, I won't go back inside that church. I don't care what job I'm doing or who gets annoyed. I'll leave the package at the door. I'll call dispatch. I'll take the write-up. Whatever. Something about that place felt wrong in a way I can't neatly explain. Even after I moved away, I still think about it more than I want to. Like some part of me is still trying to fill in that missing hour. I've had other weird moments in my life. Stuff that freaked me out, sure. But those had edges you could grab. Stress, exhaustion, coincidence, whatever. This one doesn't. I still don't understand how I ended up back in my truck, drove away, and lost time, without remembering a single second of it. And I guess what I've always wondered is, have you ever heard of something like that happening? Like true time loss? Because I'm telling you, whatever that was, it left a mark. So, I bought this house in February 2023. Brand new build, shiny everything. I'm the very first person to live here. And for months, it was totally normal. Quiet. Peaceful. The kind of quiet where you start thinking, okay, maybe I finally got a non-weird house for once. Then I had my baby in August, and we brought her home. And that's when the house started acting like it had opinions. I was home alone on maternity leave one morning, running on that newborn schedule where time doesn't exist, and you're basically a zombie with a heart. My baby wakes up crying for a bottle, and I'm like, okay, I'm coming. And I step out into the hallway toward the kitchen. And the second I leave the room, I hear it. This deep man's voice, right behind me, like it's in the doorway. Just one quick word. Low. Fast. Like someone saying, hey, or shh, or something like that. So quick I can't even be sure what it was. And immediately, my baby stops crying. Like someone flipped a switch. So I'm standing there with my whole body frozen, and then my brain kicks in and goes, nope, You are not doing this today. I finish making the bottle, because what else can you do, right? And I walk back into the bedroom. And my baby is just chilling, wide-eyed, staring off at nothing the way babies do, totally content, like she'd been comforted, like somebody had already handled it. I remember laughing, nervous, but still laughing, and I went, "Well, thanks, Mr. Echo." That's the moment he got his name. Now, I should say, I don't spook easily. I grew up with weird stuff. I've lived in places where you just sort of accept that the house is occupied. But my fiancé, his name is Dylan. Dylan is not built for this. Dylan is the type of person who hears a creak and starts mentally drafting his goodbye letter. So when things started happening more, it hit him way harder. We had this baby swing in the living room, one of those motorized ones with different speeds. And one night Dylan's in the kitchen, feeding the dogs, and I'm in the other room. The swing hasn't been used in days, like it's fully off. We're not touching it. And suddenly, it clicks on by itself. Not blasting full speed or anything, just the lowest setting, but it starts moving. That slow, gentle rocking like it's soothing someone. Dylan comes into the room with that look like he just saw a UFO land on the coffee table. He's like, "Did you do that?" And I'm like, "Nope." And he goes, "The swing was off." And I'm trying not to make it worse, but at the same time I'm thinking, of course it was off. Mr. Echo knows how switches work. Then there was the baby monitor. We bought this fancy motion sense monitor for the nursery, but the baby wasn't even sleeping in there yet. She was still in a bassinet in our room. We set the camera up in the nursery, and we had the monitor plugged in at Dylan's desk just to test the range. One day I walk by and notice the monitor is completely unplugged. Like, not just turned off, unplugged from the wall. So I ask Dylan, "Why'd you unplug it?" And he doesn't even hesitate. He just goes, "Because the screen kept turning on, by itself, like it was detecting motion, and there was nothing in there." Then he looks at me dead serious and goes, "I told him, 'Not today, Mr. Echo,' and I unplugged it." That's when we started realizing, whatever this was, it was locked in on the baby. Like the nursery was his favorite room in the entire house. A few weeks later, Dylan's parents come to visit. His dad, Mark, and his stepmom stay in the guest room, which is right next to the nursery. The next morning, we're all sitting on the couch, doing that sleepy morning small talk, and Mark goes, "So, how'd you guys sleep?" And I'm like, "Fine, honestly." And he kind of squints at us and goes, "Really? Because I heard you two in and out of the nursery all night." Me and Dylan just stare at each other. I'm like, "What do you mean?" And Mark gets very serious, like not joking, not playful, just certain. He says, "I heard footsteps walk from your room toward the nursery. I heard the door open and close. I heard someone moving things around in there, and then it would stop. And then it happened again, at least 3 times. I swear the room got colder just from him saying it out loud." And Dylan goes, "That wasn't us." And Mark kind of laughs like we're messing with him, and I'm like, "No, I'm serious. That genuinely wasn't us." And Mark's face changes, like the realization lands. Like, oh, they're not denying it because they're embarrassed. They're denying it because it wasn't them. So I just sort of sighed and said, as gently as I could, "Yeah, I think you met Mr. Echo." And nobody really knew what to say after that. Because what do you say? Sorry the invisible man spent the night checking on the nursery. I've got more, honestly, a lot more, but that's the core of it. The house was normal until the baby came home. And ever since then, it's like something in here has been hovering close, watching, wandering, occasionally reminding us, "Hey, I'm still around. The activity has slowed down in the last couple months, but every once in a while, something small happens, and I'll catch myself whispering, half amused, half serious, "All right, Mr. Echo, I see you." Okay, so most of what I'm about to tell you happened at my neighbor's place when I was growing up. And if you're into creepy stories, yeah, this one still gives me that tight feeling in my chest when I think about it. So, picture this. I'm about 15 or 16. Our neighbor, let's call her Marianne, had this huge, old, century house. The kind with heavy doors, tall ceilings, and hallways that feel a little too quiet at night. Marianne was going out of town for about 2 weeks on a work trip, and she asked if my sister and I could stay there to keep an eye on the place and her pets. My sister, I'll call her Jules, and I were super close with Marianne. We loved her little animals too. This time she had a sweet older cat and this goofy, protective mutt who followed you around like a shadow. So we were like, yeah, of course. Jules took the main bedroom upstairs. I stayed in the second bedroom, still upstairs, but mine was the one connected to this small attic door, like an actual little door in the wall. And listen, Jules and I were those teenagers. We loved creepy stuff. We'd binge paranormal shows, dare each other to stand in dark hallways, all of it. Sometimes we'd crack that attic door open a little and joke about going in. We never did, and honestly, thank God. One night, Jules stayed over at a friend's house, so it was just me at Marianne's. I'm on the couch in the living room with both pets curled up near me, just watching TV and trying to enjoy the quiet. Marianne had this alarm system that did a little beep whenever any outside door opened. Not the full blaring alarm, just a warning chirp. And out of nowhere, I hear it. Beep. I barely reacted at first because I figured it was Jules coming back, or maybe my mom stopping by to check on me. So I just waited. A minute passes. Nothing. No footsteps. No voice. No door shutting. Nothing. I call out, "Jules?" And there's no answer. So I text my mom like, "Was that you?" And she replies almost immediately like, "We're not home." That's when my stomach actually dropped because I realized that beep could have been the front door. And the front door was basically just on the other side of the wall from where I was sitting. I tried to talk myself down. Like, maybe the door wasn't latched. Maybe the wind caught it. Old house stuff. So I turn the TV up a little and pretend I'm fine. But about half an hour later, I start hearing footsteps upstairs. Not like a little creak. Not like old house settling. Actual pacing. Back and forth. Back and forth. Like someone walking across a room, turning, walking back. And I look left, dog is right there. I look right, cat is still next to me. So it's not them. I turn the TV down and just sit there, listening, frozen. It went on long enough that it stopped feeling like my imagination. It felt deliberate. Like whoever, or whatever, was up there was making sure I knew it. I called Jules and basically begged her to come back and sleep over. And she did. I don't even think she questioned it. She could tell I wasn't being dramatic. The next afternoon, I went back after school. First thing I notice? The basement door is slightly open. Now, that's already weird because Marianne always kept it shut. But I told myself maybe I did it without thinking. I closed it, tried to shake it off, and started cleaning up the dining room. I moved the chairs out, planning to sweep under the table. Then I remembered the broom was upstairs. I ran up, grabbed it, like super quick, and came back down. And when I got back to the dining room, one of the dining chairs was pushed right into the stairway opening. like it had been shoved there to block me from going back up. Again, I tried to be brave. I pushed it away like, whatever. I started sweeping, and then I felt something behind me. I don't know how else to describe it, like a sudden rush of presence, like someone stepped close enough that you can feel the air change. My whole body went cold. I dropped the broom without even thinking and ran straight out of that house, across the yard, to my parents' place like my life depended on it. After that, the rest of the 2 weeks was just constant little things. Doors that were closed being open, lights being on when we knew we'd turned them off, objects shifting places in ways that made you question your memory even when you knew you weren't wrong. And then Marianne came home. She paid us, thanked us, and then, almost casually, asked, "So, did anything strange happen while you were there?" I told her everything. The beep, the footsteps, the chair, the feeling behind me. And she kind of laughed, like this uncomfortable, resigned laugh, and goes, "Yeah, that happens a lot. I didn't want to tell you girls beforehand because I was worried you wouldn't stay." Then she added, "And you were sleeping in the worst room. The second bedroom, the one with the attic door." I mentioned the basement door being open, and I swear, her whole mood changed, like her face actually tightened. She said very quietly something like, "That's the one place I don't mess with, ever. It scares me too much." After those 2 weeks, I avoided that house for a long time. Years, honestly. Which is wild because after I graduated and moved out, Marianne offered me a room there for cheap. I was older. I needed somewhere to stay, and I thought, maybe it'll be different now. Maybe it was all teenage nerves. So I said yes. This time, she put me in what she called the music room. There used to be a piano in there, like an old upright that came with the house. She moved it out to the garage so I'd have room for my stuff. The first few nights, I felt that same wrongness, like the air in the house had weight to it, and I kept telling myself I was biased because of what happened when I was younger. But then I started waking up in the middle of the night to something that sounded like piano keys. Not a full song, just a few notes, like someone testing them. Soft and quick, just enough to snap my eyes open, and then nothing. A couple weeks later, I adopted a cat. Her name was Miso, and she's still my sweet girl to this day. And I swear, that cat would stare at corners like she was tracking something moving that I couldn't see. Sometimes she'd meow, low and annoyed, like she was warning someone off. Sometimes she'd paw at empty air. I know cats can be weird. I do. But this was different. It was like she was reacting to company. Marianne still owned the house then, but she was hardly ever there, always on trips, sometimes staying at her mom's place. She didn't even keep her pets there anymore at that point. That's part of why she wanted me living there, so the house wasn't sitting empty all the time. But being there alone at night, I heard so much. Sounds from the main bedroom when no one was up there. Movement in the kitchen when I was the only person home. And the kitchen had this setup that felt like it belonged in a horror movie. The basement door was right near the fridge, but it was partially blocked by this big appliance, so you couldn't really use it unless you moved things around. One night, I'm standing at the pantry, looking for something, and the pantry door had this glossy reflection. And in that reflection, I saw the basement door, open just a crack. Just a sliver. I turned around so fast I almost tripped, slammed it shut, locked it, and went straight to my room. No investigating, no curiosity, just nope. Marianne and I talked about the weirdness a few times, but she never went into deep detail, almost like she didn't want to say it out loud. My mom later told me Marianne had admitted a few things to her and seemed genuinely scared. And my mom warned me not to press Marianne about it. And there's one more moment. This was years before I moved in, that I still can't explain. I was outside in our yard on a hot summer day, sitting near this old sandbox. and I saw Marianne out of the corner of my eye, down at her driveway, dragging her garbage cans up toward her garage. You know that sound, wheels rattling over gravel. It's unmistakable. I heard it stop near the garage, and I looked up to wave, and no one was there. The driveway was empty. I figured maybe she went inside. But later, when I came in, my mom said, "Marianne's going to be home late. Can you bring her trash cans up for her?" I swear my whole body went numb. I told my mom, "I just watched her do it." My mom blamed the heat, said I probably imagined it. But I didn't. And one last thing that always felt eerie to me. Marianne tried to sell that house constantly. A family would buy it, and then move out weirdly fast, over and over. And it wasn't even overpriced, especially for how big it was and how decent the neighborhood was. Looking back now, I honestly think the house just had this heavy aura, like it didn't want people there, like it pushed them out. Eventually, she did sell it again, and the people living there now have stayed the longest out of anyone. And I don't know if that means whatever was there finally calmed down, or if it just learned to be quieter. So, this happened when I was in my early 20s, back when I was trying to make it as a real estate agent. I was brand new, like, still figuring out where the extra lockboxes are kept new. So I didn't even have my own listing yet. My office used to do these big open house weekends where everyone hosted on the same day. And since I didn't have a house of my own to show, another agent tossed me one like, "Here, go sit in this place and look professional." Her name was Marissa, I'm pretty sure. Nice enough, but definitely the type who'd casually hand you something cursed and call it a great opportunity. Anyway, I pull up to this house and it's honestly gorgeous, in that old money, slightly too quiet way. Massive. Like, you could lose a person in here massive. And behind it, a little storm cellar door half hidden by overgrown shrubs, like something out of an old movie. That alone should have been my sign. Inside, the layout was weird. The house had two main sides, almost like two wings. One wing had a row of bedrooms and a bathroom. Normal, bright, totally fine. But the other wing, that side held the dining room, laundry area, and a couple other rooms. And the vibe was just off. Not needs new paint off, more like you're not supposed to linger here off. The dining room in particular felt darker than it should have, even with the curtains open. It had this heavy, stale quiet to it, like the air was holding its breath. I'm not the kind of person who's usually like, "Ooh, spooky house," but I kept getting these little chills up my spine, like my body was reacting before my brain could talk me out of it. At first, a few groups came through. Polite, quick, not interested. One couple stepped into the dining room, looked around for maybe 5 seconds, and the woman literally said, "Nope," and walked back out like she forgot something in the car. After that, nothing. It got dead. Like an hour and a half of nobody dead. So I'm wandering around, pretending I'm checking the property, but really I'm just bored and trying not to stare at the dining room doorway like it's staring back. And that's when I noticed this basement door tucked away in the laundry room on the creepy side. It was kind of hidden, like the house didn't want you thinking about it. And because I'm an idiot with too much confidence and not enough experience, I'm like, well, might as well. I open it and head down. And immediately, the basement feels like the house all over again. Same weird split, like a central area with 2 directions you could go. And the lighting down there was ridiculous. There were switches everywhere, like 10 of them, but only 2 actually worked. And even those only lit up the little entry area at the bottom of the stairs. The rest stayed swallowed in darkness. So I pull out my phone and click on the flashlight, trying to act like this is totally normal and I'm not basically exploring a horror movie basement alone. And then, I turn slightly, and there is a man right behind me. Like, close. Not, oh, he's down the hall close. I mean, right there, in my personal space, as if he'd been standing there the whole time. He looked about mid-70s, maybe older. Neatly dressed, polo shirt tucked in, pressed slacks, clean shoes. He had that calm, retired guy energy, like he was on his way to play golf or judge a pie contest. And my brain just short-circuited. I'm standing there frozen, phone flashlight trembling like a tiny, terrified lighthouse, and the man looks around like he's just casually browsing. Then he goes, in this totally casual voice, "Nice place. But you know, there could be ghosts down here." And I swear to you, it was like he said the exact thought that had been sitting in my chest. So I do what any painfully awkward young professional does when confronted with a possible paranormal encounter. I try to laugh like it's a normal comment someone makes during an open house. I go, "Yeah, maybe, but nothing to worry about." And he just gives this tiny little nod, like, sure. Then he turns around and walks up the stairs. That's it. No questions about the house. No, how many square feet? No, is there a HOA? Just ghosts. And gone. I stood there for a second, trying to breathe and convince myself I didn't just hallucinate an elderly man in a pressed polo. Then I turned off the basement lights, because I don't know why, it felt wrong to leave them on, and I followed him up. And the second I hit the laundry room, I expected to see him in the kitchen or wandering toward the living room, like maybe he wanted a tour. But he wasn't there. So I walk through the creepy wing. Nothing. I check the dining room, the hall, the other wing with the bedrooms. Nothing. I go out the front door and look down the driveway, which was long enough that you'd notice someone walking away. No one. It was like he stepped out of reality the moment he reached the top of the stairs. At that point, my skin is buzzing. I'm doing that thing where you're trying to act normal, but your heart is going, nope, nope, nope. And all I can think is, how did he even find the basement that fast? And how did he leave that fast? And why did he only say that? So I made an executive decision. I'm closing early. I did one last sweep, like I made absolutely sure I wasn't about to lock an actual human being inside the house. Then I locked up and got out of there. I remember walking to my car and feeling this huge wave of relief, like the house had finally let me go. To this day, I still don't know what that was. Maybe it was a neighbor messing with the new agent. Maybe there was some side entrance to the basement I didn't notice. Maybe the guy moved faster than I thought and I was just panicking. Or maybe, genuinely, it was something else. What messes with me the most is that I never explored the rest of that basement. Not even a little. I didn't go down the dark wing. I didn't investigate. I didn't try to be brave. I just left. And I've never felt that exact kind of eerie heaviness in a building again. And I still laugh thinking about it, because if it was a ghost, is that really how you haunt someone? By politely suggesting there might be ghosts? I don't know, man. But whatever it was, it worked.